Since you are online, sorry, tester, can you hear me? Or Miss Sanders, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Loud enough, Miss Sanders?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, and it's loud enough? Sorry.
Yes, yes, you're all good.
What is what's the
Just jumping in, I'm so sorry. Now you are unfortunately not loud enough.
Thank you, I'm gonna move.
I'm gonna move.
Okay, perfect, let's just move to this table since I don't need the screen. That's just an excuse to get away from it. Okay, Miss Sanders, can you hear me fine now?
Yes, I can. That's very clear and much better.
Perfect, okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Budget Subcommittee. Chair Smith Foltz is running late because she's volunteering at Lupine Hills. So she'll be here in about 30 minutes. But let's get started. We will start with our roll call. Would you like me to do roll call? Okay. And Dr. Hurst will start the roll call.
President Gonzalez Hoy,
Present.
Trustee Clerk Smith Folds is not here right now. Kristen Persley or Ken Ryan. ASTU not present. John Zabala.
Present.
Denise Steen,
Present.
Mary Kitchen for SSA.
And Kim Chamberlain's online.
Oh, Kim Chamberlain, also great.
Yeah, actually, I'm here for business service.
Okay, perfect. And then Shanae Vaughn was here, but I think she had to leave to El Cerrito.
Oh, okay.
And then we have staff here as well, sir.
Okay, would you like to just share who from staff is here?
Yes, from staff, we have Dr. Johnson. We also have Mr. Booker. We have Mr. Freeze. We have Mr. Fleischman. We have Miss Johnson, Neely Johnson. And we also have CBO Moses. We have Rosa Cornejo, and we had Genesis as well.
Wonderful.
And Veronica Vega.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. This is our second meeting. Just for a quick summary on the work that we are doing, I will pass it to CBO Moses just to frame us of why we're here. We will do this at every meeting in case we have people watching from home who are interested. And then we will go through the next couple items pretty quickly, and then we'll jump straight to the work. Pass it to you, Ms. Moses.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm very glad to be here with you today to discuss our operating budget. Today we'll review contracts that have been approved in response to identifying needed reductions to address our structural deficit as a result of the last going concern letter and requirements of our County Office of Education, who are our fiscal oversight team. We need to identify reductions in order to ensure that we can submit to them a reduction list by December 15th that identifies approximately 19 million in potential reductions in order to address our structural deficit. This is a subcommittee led by Jamila Smith Folds and President Gonzalez Hoy, and their recommendations will be brought back to the full board.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moses. That was perfect. Another thing that I want to mention, at the first meeting, we found about 800 and change dollars that we are moving either from the general fund to categorical funding, which is restricted. And then we did cut some contracts. So mostly from technology and I think ed services a little bit. So that was what we accomplished at the first meeting. As Ms. Moses mentioned, our goal at a minimum is to find $4.6 million to cut in this work. That will help us with our deficit. So we have a lot of work to do. 4.6 million, yeah. So you know, we're a little bit there. But we have a lot of way to go. Let's open it up to see if there's any public comment. Anyone from the public has any comments, please raise your hand. I think we only have 2 folks watching right now, including one, Denise, so. I think it's really only one, so do we have any public comment, Rosa?
No public comment.
Wonderful, okay. Well, let's move forward then to actually just the first contracts that we are reviewing today. Ms. Moses, which order are we going today?
We'll pick up where we left off with the special ed contracts. We began discussing about transportation prior to concluding our last meeting. We'll start with special ed and then move on to ESSER.
Thank you. For everyone in the room, that is the gray one, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, sorry. Anyone doesn't have, oh, thank you, Doctor. Anyone who doesn't have a packet, they are over here on the table. So we're starting with the gray, it says special education on the top, and then, Ms. Moses, are you sharing your screen? Okay. Ms. Chamberlain, can you see the presentation from your screen? No? Okay. I think we can see in the room, but not in the Zoom.
It's okay, I have the documents.
Yeah, I think that we just gotta do it for anyone who
No,
might
I
watch it.
No, I don't.
But thank you, Kim. Well, Ms. Moses brings that up. I forgot to talk a little bit about process. I don't think we have anyone new today, but well, actually a couple folks, but the process for today is that we are going contract by contract. So a member of cabinet will explain what each contract is, then anyone in the committee can ask questions. We will raise your hand and go by order. And then after that, we have a discussion as a group, and then we take a tally vote. Tally vote looks like this, where thumbs up means that yes, let's keep this contract, let's continue the services of what that it does. Sideways is I can live with whatever decisions made by the group, but I am not sure. And then if it's down, that means I would like to cut the contract. If there is disagreement or different opinions within the committee, we have a discussion where people continue to share their perspective. And then after that, we revote, and then majority decides how we move forward. Any questions from the committee? I should have started. Sorry, I rushed us straight to Denise. Yeah.
Is it necessary to reiterate the cuts that were made from the last meeting for equity's sake?
That is a good question. I would love to do that. I think that hopefully as we go to 4 or 5 meetings, I think it's gonna get much longer. So I don't know to what extent we want to do that moving forward, but maybe for today, Ms. Moses, do you have a sheet with it? With the cuts that we proposed at the last meeting?
I can tell you.
I have a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Would you be able to share your screen? Is that possible? Just so we can look at it?
Very many, so I can call them off.
Okay, that's a good idea. Maybe for today, if you could just call that off, Ms. Moses.
So. Was the thing that you're hearing multiple there. So I have
Oh, yeah, sorry. If Eric could please mute. Is there someone who's unmuted? I don't see anyone.
Even on your laptops, you have to mute.
Your volume. And it says everyone's muted.
Yeah, 8 pages.
Okay, so there were 5 contracts securely There was an $18,600 contract that was an additional service that we decided to eliminate. There was $82,500 in Studio 510 from LCAT. Actually, 3 contracts from LCAT totaling, I don't have a total here, 65, 32, approximately 200,000. And then Lozano Smith, we decided we were going to decrease. Oh, 180,000. We decided we're gonna decrease the superintendent's legal budget by $25,000. And just a reminder that these are cuts that we're making for next year. In addition, looking for the larger cut that we made. Okay, the cut amount from last time looks like it shows 223,000, but I do remember a larger amount, so let me find what we discussed cutting, but it doesn't reflect the note.
Yeah, no problem. It was the Studio 5, wasn't it? The Studio 5?
Yeah.
Studio 10?
Studio 510.
Yeah.
510. And that's what's being moved to categorical funds.
Yes. Thank you for the mind.
John, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but, I distinctly remember in the spring, we received really extensive packets, and I'm noticing, for example, in special education, I'm only seeing transportation. So I'm just wondering what the difference is in what we're receiving during this set of these meetings versus the spring set of meetings.
Yeah, so right now we're reviewing only unrestricted funds that have been assigned already. So what has been approved for contracts, so it's about 22 million. There's about another 20 million that have not been contracts that have not been approved that we're going to review after.
Okay.
We have finished these, and then we are not reviewing restricted, which really that's where the bulk of SPED is. We are going to look at SPED separately. We're gonna look at SPED separately, but yeah, that's mostly restricted.
So this is, unrestricted funds that have already been assigned, separate from not yet approved contracts.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? For clarity's sake, I think this is good to ask these questions. Okay. Ms. Mosley, still need a few minutes to,
I'm not yet promoted as a panelist and share the document.
oh, okay, no worries.
And I do actually see that we also cut a coaching contract from Dr. Hurst's budget.
Oh, yeah.
$50,000. So let me get you
Thank you.
over the list. I didn't take notes last time.
Got it.
I did paper notes.
Yeah. I do like the suggestion from Miss, I keep calling you Denise, Miss Steen, sorry. I'll get better at calling her by the last name. By Miss Steen to, maybe we could have a copy of all of our cuts at every meeting that we've done so far, if that's okay. Maybe at the front of the packet, I think that would help us to say kind of like, how far are we from our goal? Right, that too. So,
Well, and also,
Yes.
Yes.
when is cutting some, we want to make sure that they're seeing the other budgets.
sure. Good point.
Okay, so I am sharing screen. That's good. Special education unrestricted contract.
I'm so sorry.
This is a special education unrestricted contract.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we really only have 3 that we're looking at today. Mr. Fleischman, thank you for being here. Can I pass to you?
Sure. So I'll start with transportation. The first student's transportation contract. We are in year 1 of a 5-year contract. This went out to an RFP last winter into the spring. We received 2 proposals. One was from First Students, one was from Michaels. Michaels could only do, I believe, 6 bus routes in our district. We have approximately just over 100 daily bus routes that are in service. And those are buses with multiple students on them. And then we have about 80 to 100 routes that are going as well. So, clearly, this was the only proposal that we received that could come anywhere near the needs of our district. And so, given that this is the contract we went to, we have been with First Student for quite some time. And this budget here covers both the group busing and the individual parcels.
Thank you. And just to be clear, there's two, because there are two different resources for the allocation of funds, right? So one is just coming from our general fund, and then the other one's coming from state lottery.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, questions from the committee on this specific item?
Last
Go ahead,
meeting,
Sam.
I brought up the possibility of transportation provided to general education students in the same locations where special ed students are being picked up. And what would that entail? What sort of research would need to happen? How many parents would actually take advantage of that for a fee? I know that it does happen in other districts where they provide transportation and the parents pay the monthly fee. So I'm wondering if that's been considered, is it a possibility? I mean, it is a way to mitigate some of the costs. And to also encourage enrollment, encourage attendance. It would be a multifolded solution to some of our critical issues.
Mhm. It's a great question. Mr. Fleshman, would you like to answer that, or?
It's not a conversation I've had. The first thing that comes up for me is an equity issue. Is that, what about those gen ed students who can't afford the monthly fee, but would like to avail themselves of such a service? And if it's a service that exists in our district, can we legally make it at cost? Whereas, textbooks or any other, general service that's provided is free of charge within the district. It brings up questions.
Good point.
I think it's a good idea and it could potentially, recoup some money. The other concern though that I do have is that space on the buses is already an issue, particularly when some of the students have, one-to-one support or, issues of safety, in transportation. So I think it would need a lot of, more, dialogue. I apologize, President Gonzalez, whether there's a family emergency going on right now, I'm getting a phone call, so I'm gonna
Yeah, please go ahead. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr.
I
Fleshman.
think I'll add to the transportation piece. Our special education students that ride on these buses, they need a lot of attention and support that they receive with that bus monitor. And so to add on the general education students that we don't know the needs or the support for them, I don't think pairing them together might necessarily be the best thing. I think that might be a good idea to provide the transportation. But I think it'll have to be something separate in addition that we create. I think it's a good idea, but I think we should create a different plan for that instead of trying to add to what we already have in place. Because we already are struggling with finding routes for kids who need transportation for right now.
Mhm.
So first student is really trying to add routes. It's not as many drivers that there used to be, so.
Got it. Well, I mean, maybe this is something we can put in our parking lot for us to research. Rosa, would you mind taking on that? I think that it's a great suggestion. And if it could bring in funding, that's great. I do think Mr. Fleshman brought up a really good point about equity, right? So so I do wonder if we're opening also kind of worms there, but let's just research, right? We don't lose anything on doing that. Ms. Chamberlain had two questions. Ms. Chamberlain, would you like to repeat them or would you like me to read them?
I can say them if you get it. These services I'll go to the first one first, is that the services also include the individual transportation of the one-off students in cars, correct?
Right.
Maybe Ms. Johnson, Sonia, or Ms. Moses can attest. Nope. So that would be my first question.
Tim, that's a yes to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious on that portion of it. And then because I know it's quite a bit of funding in there, but I would hope that it would also include those areas. And then the other question that kind of goes into, I know we have students that are being transported, but they have siblings. Is there a way that I mean, I kind of go for Denise's idea there. Is there a way the parents could pay for those? They're going to the same location. Can those parents pay for those kids to go also, rather than having to take public transportation, or get, the parents have to transport them if they're going to the same location? I'm just curious on that piece of it. I mean, if we have to get the parents to do that piece, pay a little bit for that, that might be something to offset it. And it may also calm down some of the issues for the student on the bus going on the same location. I know that happens sometimes too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a good point. We'll also write that on our notes to look into.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Sabella?
I just, if you're not familiar with me in these meetings, you will learn that I tend to cut things, because I'm here to protect people's jobs. I just want to point out, as a former, I guess, current aesthetic, worker, employee in the district, this is a necessary cost. We can't get around it. It is what it is. And, I think we could probably, move on relatively quickly.
I just wanted to make sure, John, that there wasn't any other costs coming from this, that all the transportation costs from
Yeah.
first student were included. That's my biggest concern, that we're not gonna see something else for the Uber rides that we have to have kids doing, or we're paying, or something else that is occurring also. Because I know we also have to, with special educations and non-public schools, we have to help pay for their transportation too, I believe.
Mhm.
And this is included in this cost, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everyone in the conversation. I mean, I agree, obviously, we cannot cut this item, right? But I think the conversation was helpful. So I think that we can move to the next item, which is Maxim Health Services. And Mr. Fleshman had to leave. Miss Neely Johnson, would you be able to speak on this item?
Sorry.
Oh, you can speak on, sorry, Miss Moses, sorry, Miss Neely Johnson.
This, second contract under unrestricted is actually a healthcare contract for our 504 students.
Mm.
So this is not for special education students, these are for our general education students who have section 504 plans. And many of them have an identified health need, and there needs to be medical support for that need. This contract is to satisfy those services, and I do not believe it can be cut.
Okay. Well, that makes the conversation a little easier. So yes.
Our nurses are, these are our health staff. Students with disabilities, we can't get around it.
Great. Thank you for adding that, Mr. Sella.
Now, this one I am gonna dig in a little bit on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my question is, these are LVNs, I think, or the
It's
RNs?
a range, it's a range, just depending on the need.
So this is a contracted service that we do have hired RNs in the district for sure. Do we have hired staff LVNs?
Yeah.
So potentially this is an area that, what I'm curious to, I wanna know is, what is the cost per student on this contract? How many people exactly is it hiring? What would that hourly be for those, or per cost, right? And what is that difference compared to with our district staff? So for example, let's say, and I'm just making up numbers here, right? But this is a $600,000 budget. Let's say it touches 60 students, right? That's about 10,000 a student. What is the cost of that per district? So I do think this is something, I know we're short on staff, but it is an area I think that could, I'm curious about these contracts to get really comparison data on what staff costs versus contracted costs are.
I can speak to that generally. So this is a budgeted amount, but we pay as we use the service. So we have $600,000 budgeted for this contract based upon previous usage and the analytics that suggest how much we cost out each year. With that said, we have to really look at each student's 504 service plan to understand who needs an LVN, who has an RN. We just concluded a meeting this morning talking about our vacancies where our LVNs and RNs are concerned, and we're severely understaffed. So this is certainly a contract that we only use when we must. If we can't first fulfill the services of the district, then we go to maximum. And can't say for certain that that is the amount that would be spent, but that is the amount that's budgeted at the time based upon previous meetings.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, I'm aware of the staffing shortage, of course. And so, but if we're really talking about where we can, try and look into where we can absorb some of these costs in special ed, we have to start thinking about, staffing. Right now, for example, I know with psychologists, speech and nurses, there's 120s. So they're taking on additional work. We're probably maxing them out in terms of what they can personally take on. So we're gonna have to do a lot of these contracts. But over time, we're gonna wanna see, I think, this diminish, especially as we improve our hiring, et cetera. So for the committee, for these types of contracts, it would be helpful to look at, I think, what this is costing us additionally beyond what a regular worker, a unionized worker here in the district would cost us.
Dr. Johnson and Mr. Flashman, do you know how many
Sorry, you froze up.
On the LVN side, we had 15 allotted FTE for the district. I believe 13 of those 15 were there.
got it? Okay.
And I don't believe we hired on any for 14 or 15.
Got it. Gotcha. And Dr. Johnson, maybe you can speak on this one, or, you know, anyone, I mean, all of you, I mean, I really don't agree. What do you think is our biggest problem with hiring nurses right now? I mean, apart from, obviously, we know there's a shortage of healthcare workers as well as educators, but like, what do you think is our biggest lack of, because we used to have up to, Ms. Neely Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong, like 8 or 11. So what do you think is the main cost? And we're starting to get a little bit away from, but I think that obviously it's a correlation of why we need this contract. So would any of you have any thoughts on?
I can jump in on that actually.
Yeah.
Last week I was at our state self-led directors conference, the monthly state self-led conference. And this is across every self-led in the state.
Everyone's having a shortage.
Everyone's having like dire issues with hiring. And so I can unequivocally say there's nothing to do with our practices as a district. It's not HR, it's not union versus non-union, it's not contract versus non-contract, like there's just no nurses in the state of California for schools. You know, if the other self-leds were saying, oh no, we're flush, what's the problem? Then I would have some concerns with what are we doing, but there's, you know, this is a statewide issue.
Got it. Thank you. That's really helpful.
And for clarity, we don't have any RNs contracted from Maxim. There may be some of their staff that have that licensure of an RN. They don't have the school nursing license. And so when they come to us from Maxim, they come to us as LPNs.
Got it. So
And so they fall.
it wouldn't necessarily mean hiring more nurses wouldn't really help us here. It'd be more LVNs that really are the.
We could hire more LPNs. There's 2 vacancies and potentially transfer, make 5 positions out of this, right? This is 600 or 6 positions roughly. I don't know what an LPN.
Well, LVN is definitely more than 100, I'm assuming, with benefits and between benefits and salary. I'm assuming, like, how much do you think Ms. Moses? Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would
But
definitely.
even still, they're not there. Like we have these 2 open positions, it's posted on EdJoin, you know, we're just.
Where to get them from?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Neely Johnson, then we'll go to Ms. Steen after you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Neely Johnson.
Sure.
Oh, you know, I was gonna say, most of our LVNs that we have, and some of our nurses came from that. So what does happen, is that sometimes they don't wanna just continue to work, you know, with a contractor, because sometimes they can be moved. So, we have been able to kind of do a level of recruiting. The 2 people that just left, unfortunately, did come through that. So they were contracting with us first, then they actually became employees. So, there's a way, I think that's the piece is getting out there to recruit people in such specialized fields, that has been difficult for all districts. And the same conversation has happened.
Makes sense. Thank you, Misty.
So I'm wondering from a budget perspective, if we're budgeted for 11 nurses and we have 4. Where is that $1 million? Because if they're $150,000 each, year after year, where does that surplus go? And how can we tap it? I mean, I think we've had a deficit of nurses for 2 years running. So where is that budgeted money? And I understand that you need them. I don't have one at college, so we're really struggling to make that happen. So keeping the 600,000, using it as necessary, but where is that money that we haven't spent? Much like our vacancies, right? Teachers, where is that surplus?
Yeah, so just like the teacher vacancy, first we have to do everything we can to use that money to recruit students. So some of that money is going towards contracts to get people in where we can find them. We can't find them and there isn't someone that would pay a 1.2 or a contract that is satisfying the need. What happens is it becomes what we call unintended expense, and it goes back into the fund balance. So in the case of what we're talking about today, where we're trying to address the structural deficit, that crisis of staffing would end up supporting the in-fund balance because the money does go back into the fund balance because it's not used for intended purpose.
And you don't know those totals until the first interim.
Yeah. So we
Coming up.
Yeah, so it's during the first interim and during the second interim that we find where the run-ins and the savings have happened. Conversely, I'm told, which will be my first interim, is that there are also unintended expenditures that sometimes offset the unintended savings. So how the two sides are gonna balance at this point, I don't know, but the money is put back into the fund balance. Okay.
Okay, well, gosh, I mean, I think that this one's hard, right? Like we want to cut it, but we can't cut it, like, right? Like we don't want to obviously hurt our students who need the service. So, well, let's just, yes.
There's another piece to this also, that is just financial, right? And of course, the primary focus here is always students and certain needs. And we're talking about money. So like, please don't mistake the thing that I'm gonna say next to be impersonal or anything. But some of the students that have LVNs assigned, when there's not an LVN, cannot safely be at school, right? And so financially, it can become very costly to the district when we then end up having to send this child to either a public school, or we have a huge amount of compensatory education, things like that. So there is a certain amount of investment in this $600,000 that could end up being more financially costly if we don't do it. And I have to just reiterate that it feels, I hate to speak of it in terms of those kind of numbers, because we're talking about kids and their well-being. But we're also having a conversation about money, so I can't be specific.
No, thank you for saying that. Absolutely. Okay, well, just to practice, let's all just vote on whether or not we want to keep this contract or not. Wonderful. And we'll keep it. Okay, this since we are just done with this piece, it feels like actually a very organic place to pause, because Clark Smith was walking in and breakfast just arrived. Thank you, Ms. Munoz, for getting a breakfast. So we're gonna take a 7-minute break. So let's come back. That's 8 minutes. Let's come back at 9:55. And then if we could put on the screen, we're just taking a 8-minute break. Thank you, everyone. Ms. Chamberlain, sorry we can't send you breakfast, but I hope that you get a break.
Okay, I'll get a second cup of coffee. Thank you.
I had to let go of something.
Oh, me too. It's killing me. Can we meet up?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Thank you for breakfast. That was really yummy. Everyone watching on Zoom, we owe you breakfast. Okay, and we have Clerk Smith Foltz, now in the room with us. So I'm glad she joined us. I'm gonna continue leading us through the contracts. Excuse me, Ms. Moses, what would you like to move to now?
But ed services,
Wonderful, let's move to Ed Services. Everybody, it's in blue on your sheets.
Thank you.
Of course. Actually, there's a few in blue, so ignore that. It's the shorter blue. Oh no, there's a shorter blue. Ignore that too. It says educational services on the top. Okay, Ms. Neely Johnson, are you leading us through this section?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, you do want me to kind of.
Yeah, let's just go one at a time and then we'll ask questions and comments from each one. Actually, Ms. Neely Johnson, is there any way that you could move maybe a little bit closer? I mean, you're welcome to sit with us, or you're welcome to sit over here, anywhere close. Yeah, this would be really. Okay.
Okay, so this first line, I see is Lozano Smith. And, that one I have not had as much experience with. I'm assuming it is the lawyer, Lozano Smith is the lawyer, and it says, for Title IV. So.
that's a typo, it should say Title IX, this is Title IX.
Okay, that's what I was like, I was thinking, why does it say Title IV? Thank you.
So is this for the Title IX office?
Okay,
Oh,
so that's the
okay.
Title IX.
Gosh.
Yes. The next.
Actually, Ms. Neely Johnson, we could stop there for a second.
Okay, sure.
So, the 300,000, that's how much we're allocating because that's how much it was spent last year, more or less.
More or less, I think more.
More last year.
We're hoping to decrease legal fees this year, and so we budgeted less, we're hoping to use less.
I do remember that. Just so the group knows, we spent a lot last year on Title IX complaints. And I do remember it was way more than this, unfortunately. So. Anyone have any questions?
Are you shooting for the 10% that we're decreasing other legal fees as well?
Yes, however, we've already decreased this one quite a bit based upon what they spent last year, so if they can stay within this amount, we'll be doing it.
Okay.
And can I just add there's a little bit of difference? Dr. Hurst was Dr. Hurst's services and contracting legal, getting counsel, which she can control. Title IX, we don't control because they are complaints coming from various people. So just want to be mindful of that.
Great point.
And the legal services we use with Title IX, that's our Title IX office calling out to legal, asking an opinion based on a case that they got in front of them.
Well, and depending on.
Or
the level of
an
complaint,
investigation,
Legal may have to.
do an investigation. So it's either a question or an investigation that they're doing, and that's based on the type of complaint that they got.
Yes,
Okay.
and a legal obligation to.
And it's not every time, it's just if they have something new, like if they've got a complaint that they've dealt with before, they kind of know the pathway, how to navigate that, right? It's not picking up the phone every time you get a Title IX complaint. It's if you have a question or if there needs to be an investigation.
And some are more complicated and
Than
involve a larger scale.
I'm assuming this is a yes, but this is probably typical for districts to do these services, for online investigations. And I think what I heard you just saying when you just talked is that it doesn't always necessitate referral to legal services, but, that is the smart thing to do in these situations, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know $300,000 is still a large number.
Jordan Colley, please come to the front office. Jordan Colley, please come to the front office. Thank you.
But just to put in perspective, Ms. Moses, I don't know if you have the figure in mind, but I know last year we spent like a couple $1 million. So this is actually a very large decrease, more than the 10% that was spent last year. And unfortunately for this. So we are really shooting for stronger customer service, stronger mediation in the early process. So okay, let's vote. Do we keep it? Can live with it? Would I like to cut it? Ms. Chamberlain. Okay, wonderful. Okay, sorry, I want to make sure that we're looking at the right people, because I don't know if I don't want to miss anyone. We're missing adult school and Teamsters.
Okay, is, Ms. Vaughn coming in late?
She was here when she left for us.
She was here and you said to leave. Okay, okay. So there are 3 units represented, and then the 2 of us, that makes 5. And Dr. Hershey vote, that makes 6, so it has to be 4 out of 6. Okay.
Okay, we can move forward. Thank you, Ms. Neely Johnson.
Okay, the next ones are Imagine Learning, and these are the science curriculum, new adoption for both of these.
And that includes the
TK,
the 4,
TK 6,
okay, the 4 items.
yes, and it's the 4 items.
Got it. Is this a yearly cost or is this just for this year?
I actually do not know that, so I can check in. Most times when we have an adoption, it's the base cost, and then many times if there are any supplementals,
Like a
it's a lot
subscription?
less. So I can, but I will double check that.
Thank you. Yeah, because this seems really high for a subscription, right? So yeah, if you wouldn't mind finding out, why don't we put this one on pause until we get that information? Because also if it's only one time, well, then it's not continuing, right? So
But find out for the supplemental costs that we would have for the life of the adoption.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
The next one is the Renaissance Learning, which is our STAR, and that's the 50,192.48. And STAR is at our high school. So our high school, we have iReady K-8, and then STAR is our local assessment for 9-12.
Got it. Okay. Any questions on this one?
This would be the actual, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we'll go Mr. Savala and then Ms. Chamberlain. Okay.
Thanks, sorry, I just spoke out of turn. This is the actual subscription service, or is it training?
No, this is subscription.
Thank you.
Ms. Chamberlain?
I couldn't hear what Mr. Zavala said. Did he say subscription or the actual services? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, he asked if this was the cost for the license.
The licensing of it. And how many, I mean, is this a testing that all of our teachers are actually using at the high school level?
Yes, this is our local assessment that we do 3 times a year, and it's on our assessment calendar. Right now, we have K for TK8, we have iReady, and for 9-12, we have STAR.
And that's what I was curious is if the high schools are actually utilizing this.
It is, I would say that it is what we call a mandate that they utilize it. I will also be transparent in that our percentages at high school haven't been great, but we are working to improve those, and I've already seen improvement this year. So just giving people support to get that assessment done. It's a local assessment, but it also is a way of progress monitoring to give us, information, inform our instruction.
We'll go back to Mr. Spala.
Yeah, I'll just share that I have experience with STAR. It was previously used universally in the K6s as well. Now I know we've transitioned to iReady, but for example, as a school psychologist, I would go in and pull up local norms on the classroom, see, how's the students reading compared not just to their classmates, but also nationally, because it gives you norm data as well. So it's one of the methods by which we're doing universal assessment for our students. Yeah.
Is this the only local assessment that we give in secondary? For
For
test data?
district-wide,
Yeah.
yes. that I would say that we quote unquote mandate, because we
Right.
have it's on our assessment calendar. And there are other supplementals that people use and sites use that they many times buy with their own funding.
Got it. Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, let's move to a vote. Okay, we'll keep it. We can move forward. Thank you.
The next one is the blanket PO for repairs, and this is for our VAPA program for our instruments. As you know, we have a pretty robust, music program, and, you know, having seen how many instruments come back for repair, many times at the end of the year, our students do a really good job, but we do sometimes have to, do some repair, and so this amount is 40,000. I have not looked to see what we spent last year, but this is like a blanket PO, so if we spend less, then as Ms. Moses said, those funds would be recouped.
Thank you. Is it something that could be transitioned to Prop 28 or the music grant next year?
I would need to look at that to see. I'm assuming that, and that probably is more of a complex question for
Yeah.
repairs or the instruction.
So I have to check the use bill out, the use of Prop 28. I do know that this will go in our price music instructional grant that we have. However, we are always gonna have costs for instrument repair. So moving it to a one-time restricted fund will be a temporary fix because eventually it has to come back into the general fund.
Yeah.
Just considering those facts.
Yeah, and I wonder, since Prop 28 is moving forward, if maybe that would be a more adequate place, but
Prop 28, as far as I know, is all allocated to sites. So
it's
this,
all allocated to.
I'm not aware, this is the grant managed right now by Dr. Huey. But I'm not aware of any centralized funds for Prop 28. I believe it all goes to sites. So if we were to ask them to prepare their own instruments, they would have to get their own individual contract under Prop 28.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Can I also add, currently, the way our instrument program works is that they're, you know, given out at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, the students return them, or the teachers collect them.
Sorry. So I think 1 minute.
And I back with your brought to you by your leadership class. Welcome back, Dominic. Workshop meetings will be held twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays after school, starting at 3:45 p.m. One is right. Please come to our meetings tomorrow after school. Dinner refreshments will be served as well. Good afternoon, currently participating in the fall.
It's gonna be a bit.
If they did these announcements in Spanish.
Just say it like this.
And did we already talk about this before in the last one, where we had, because there's two different things. Because the instruments, the orchestra instruments, and so there was two different ones that we did that last time. But this one, is this the same? Or is this a different one? Because we had two different ones that we looked at, because we talked about the old ones, and then in the last, we can. No, it's the same.
We'll be posting a college awareness week from October 23rd to October 27th.
Oh, it's really.
Let's go to flyer and get more.
Hercules did this all over.
want to go? Give us sense that everybody is better and it's.
Please.
That's really
Okay.
So this, I didn't go back.
Okay, we'll go back to it in a minute. Okay, thank you, everyone. Sorry, thank you for your patience. It's a nice thing of being at schools. Okay, so let's continue the conversation on the instruments. Clerk Smith also had a couple questions, and then I have a proposal there.
We looked at last time, repairing instruments, and those of you remember, it was from two different things, because one was repairing band instruments is different than repairing orchestra instruments. Is this both of them combined, or is this completely different?
I would have to double check that.
Okay, that's okay. So that would be my first and main question. It's
So
just
orchestra versus.
band, because they were two different, they were by the same people. I think Rockin' Robbie was one of them, if I
Yeah.
remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Rockin' Robbie was one, but they're two different contracts that we had because there's two different types of
We're
repairs.
texting our coordinator for VAPA.
Okay,
Okay, so are there any other questions? Okay, Ms. Moses and Dr. Hurst, this is what I would propose, and Julie Johnson. I would like to propose that we switch this to the music grant next year. And that then we put a placeholder that we have to figure out how to fund it moving forward. Through one-time funds. The reason why I'm thinking that is because we have a very large end fund balance. Now, all if we make the cuts necessary, because otherwise the end fund balance is like slowly and quickly going away in the next 3 years. But my proposal would be like, we move to the music grant next year. If that discontinues, then we figure out how to pay it out of one-time funds moving forward. So it is important. But since we have the music grant coming, I think it could be a good place to utilize that. How would you all feel about that?
Check the expiration date of the AMIM, the Arts and Music Instructional Materials Block Grant, because that's the one we have to do, so let me just make sure.
Please, that'd be great. Ms. Miller Jo, do you have
And I
any
would just
thoughts?
say how I would feel about that is that if it would be a legal cost, then yes, utilize the funds that we can use now to be able to have cost savings for sure.
Dr. Hurst? Yeah, you're in there. Okay.
I also think that we need to look at, I've had two kids go through the music program. One is in 5th grade, so she's at the beginning of going through it, and one just graduated, went all the way through it through 4th grade. Looking at those papers that we sign as parents, there could be a line in there about you need to make sure that, not a cost because it's a public school, but please ensure that you take care of this instrument. We use it from year to year. There also could be some education with the students about this is how you take care of your instrument. They be chunking them around like baseballs at the end of the day. That case can only hold so much. That case is going to get dented and the instrument's going to get broken. So musical education includes how do we take care of our instrument? How do we keep our instrument clean? How do we take care of the buttons on the clarinet to where you're not stripping them and they have to be repadded? So there are some things that we can do to break down that cost by giving some accountability to the students and some education to the students and the parents about this instrument is part of WCCUSD. And also give them a list of places that they can go and rent them. If you have the funds to rent your own instrument, and you think that your kid is gonna play this instrument, we had to end up buying Irish's clarinet because she ended up playing it in college. So we like, let's just go ahead and invest in it. So again, a little bit of parent education can help lower our costs.
I will pass it on to our new VAPA coordinator.
Okay, and so I have an answer about the Arts and Music and Instructional Materials Block Grant. That grant expires June of 2024. So this $40,000, we can move from this year's budget to that grant, but for next year, we'd have to put it or find another funding source. So if you'd like me to move that over, we certainly can do that, but it'll be for this year's fund balance, not next year.
But AB 28, 80% is personnel and 20% is materials and supplies. And each school has it. And each school has a music director, a band director. So wouldn't it be in our best interest to, if that band director has to have one of the instruments taken care of, it comes out of that material and supplies money, sort of spreading out wealth, which then goes to, if you're a good band director, you're teaching your kids how to be careful. And it's not just this pot. So I know it's the first year that we have it and it's very slow to come, but according to the governor, it is going to be a long-term assembly bill to bring the arts back. So, and if we don't spend the money this year, it rolls over to next year. So that would be an increasing pot of money that we could tap into. So I think the 1 year that we do it, then looking ahead for next year, seeing how AB 28 works out, and then maybe not having to put it back into this contract. Although we keep the contract people, we just pay them a different way.
Yeah. As most, what do you think?
I think from a budget perspective, that sounds viable, but I think from a equity perspective, it puts the onus on site principals to make sure that their instruments are in good repair. So from that standpoint, it's an added duty for site leadership or an added duty for music teachers. And I think in terms of equity, I believe it should be a centralized expense to make sure every child has an instrument, because us taking care of repairs could be the difference of a child's instrument being out for repair and then getting a loaner, or a child's instrument being out for repair and you just don't have it.
Couldn't we take a percentage of that percentage? And put it into a pot, so instead of me getting $10,000, I might get 8,500, and so 1,500 go into the central pot from each of the sites. And that way, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could do that.
Well, we have to look at the rules of the grant, and because that's one that's managed in CTE, that's not one that I have a lot of knowledge about. What I do know is that Dr. Huey has set up all of the Prop 28 money to be distributed to sites. I'm not sure if there's a pot at all for VAPA, because that would depend upon the language of the actual legislation, whether it's site specific or not. I think we'd have to ask that question of our VAPA lead or Dr. Huey in order to clarify, because I just don't have that. I can research it.
Ms. Neely Johnson, I wonder if maybe you could potentially have a conversation with Dr. Huey.
Right.
Who's the new VAPA director?
Right now, Chris Reed is the
Chris
VAPA
Reed,
coordinator, and then Dr. Huey, and he's new, so he's coming in. I want to also say that things were already in place when, he coming in new. I can circle back with Dr. Huey in terms of like, Ms. Moses is saying, what, the rules are, and that if there's a way that we can pull centrally, amount for all schools, right?
Yeah.
And then give them the remaining. So we would probably have to estimate cost.
Right.
And take that off the top and then allocate their part.
Or worst case scenario, maybe the director from the district to site principals, and that funding is that they have to put aside 8% of that funding for repairs, right? Or something like that. And then they will be thoughtful when they allocate that funds, like, oh no, we gotta keep 10% or 8% for the repairs. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think we actually are in the custom of doing that sometimes with central funds. So I think it's just us figuring out how much our costs are. So looking at the actuals maybe from last year and then figuring out, and we just spread it across everybody. That's the percentage you pay, and then this is the amount you get.
Okay. Well, then if it's okay, what I'll propose is that we do move it. And then maybe Ms. Moses and Ms. Neely Johnson, you both could just give us a quick update at the next meeting on how it was moved. And if not, we can reconsider that position. Is that okay? You okay with that? Okay, then
Can we go back?
yeah, we'll go back in a minute. Let me just make sure we're all in agreement. Devera, could please vote on that proposal. Okay, that's $40,000. We're not wasting our day today.
This is the first saving?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Ms. Miller Johnson.
Okay, so, first of all, I want to apologize that, we have a lot of vendors that have the same name, and so Imagine Learning also does our science curriculum, and then I realized that, oh, that should have came out of a different fund. So, the first one, I'll say the two lines, it's the 245,000 and the 25,000. These are actually for virtual teachers. And so, and then the second two lines that are also for Imagine Learning are for Edgenuity. So that's our credit recovery. And so the reason they're separated is that, when you have a vacancy, for example, I'll use one of our high schools has a Spanish vacancy, right? And so we have a sub in the classroom, but then there is a Spanish teacher that is teaching the content, so that the students can get their A through G requirements. And then Edgenuity is what we use for credit recovery so that we can, make sure that our students are able to recover credits and be A through G compliant. So I just want you to know, and this, we also use Edgenuity for our summer, program as well.
Thank you. Anyone have questions on this?
Oh, yep.
Ms. Chamberlain, go ahead.
So this concerns me. So the one for the virtual teachers, does it come with a virtual school, consider a virtual platform for them to utilize? Because we, in technology, we had already kept part of the Zoom because of virtual teachers. And now we're spending another $245,000 plus for virtual teachers for this portion of the curriculum. Is it curriculum? What are they getting out of this? I mean, that's a lot of money for a small program.
It's the teachers. And so in secondary, you have to have a specific credential. And so, a little different from elementary because we have multiple subject, right? So these are teachers that have those specific single subject credentials. So some of the places where it's hard to find, or an English teacher, maybe a science teacher that teaches chemistry, or maybe a math teacher that can teach, algebra or algebra 2. So it's being used in the secondary, it's not being used in our elementary.
But okay, I understand that, but you're saying that the one portion of it, the 245,000, is that all just for the secondary use for Edgenuity, or is that also for?
So there's two programs. So one, the first two is just for the actual teacher. So for example, a high school doesn't have a teacher that can teach the Spanish, right? And so we have.
I get that piece of it. But what I'm asking is, you said virtual not the virtual school teachers, though, is what you're telling me.
These are virtual teachers that are filling our vacancy.
Okay, so it doesn't have anything to do with virtual school, actual school, Vista Virtual. This is, that's what was confusing to me with that stuff.
Sorry.
Okay.
So virtual teachers for vacancies that we can't fill that have specific credentials, because when students, as you know, are in 9 through 12, they have to have a teacher who is credentialed in that content for them to get credit.
Right. And we're having to utilize that in our middle schools also now. Okay.
Ms. Moses?
I was just gonna, from a costing perspective, we pay for the courses. So there's a per student cost per course. So what we're paying in this contract is not for the, it's for the direct service. I just wanna make that correct.
Mr. Sabella?
So this, can be an expensive program, and so one of the things, when we were talking last year, I think it was newer, it's not newer now, we should have some data on how our students actually performed on the credit recovery. And I'm either imagining things, or someone mentioned to me that they didn't think, this program was super actually effective in doing that credit recovery. So if that is the case, then I think that's information that might affect the way we vote. So just, I'm assuming you don't have that information today, that's, deep information.
So we actually did when we did I think our summer school update, we did talk about how many credits were recovered and they used Edgenuity. So I can actually get you guys that specific since we're having another meeting, if we want to come back and then make decisions to vote. I would say just in terms of the classes where we have the vacancies, where we need to have that, I'm saying from a parent perspective, I need to know that my child is getting the credits that they need so that they are on track for graduation. Credit recovery, I understand that, maybe there's some discussion about that piece. But for sure, for the teachers that are providing that content, that they need to be ACG compliant and, eligible for college in many cases, then, that one would be one I would highly advocate for.
How many teachers does this pay for?
Right now, I think we did the contract based on last year. So I think that he told me we had 10 teachers in there. Right now, I think we have 3 that are assigned. But as we're getting, we're not able to find people, and we possibly sometimes have to have more. So I'll bring that data back.
Ms. Moses, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so for credit recovery, this cost here is for access to the actual course. In addition to this, we do have to pay teachers in order to run the course. So we pay this amount just to have access to the online platform. What you're speaking about in terms of number of teachers, that's a separate cost altogether.
Can I add something? So the piece that Ms. Moses just said, so if we're paying for the courses, right? The teacher that we pay an extra, sometimes if people have more periods, they may be running an Edgenuity period. I would need to double check in Power School to see which schools are doing that. But in that case, the student is, during their school day, able to have that extra period. Many times it's a 7th period where they can actually make up some of those credits. And the goal is to reduce the need to have to go to summer school so that they're doing something more exciting in the summer, like internships, etc.
Thank you. So, I mean, honestly, part of me wants to cut it, and I'll tell you why. The first section, there were 270, because we need to be recruiting teachers for those, right? Now, I understand it kind of goes with the LBN conversation. Where am I going to pull teachers from, right? And at the same time, I think that this is an allocation for next year, right? This year, we can't do anything about it. We need those positions filled, right? But for next year, should we already be allocating for, it almost feels like a deficit mindset, right? Like, we already know we're not gonna recruit, so I'm gonna put money aside because we know we're not gonna recruit, right? And at the same time, I also know it's reality, right, that we can't find people. So I was wondering if any of you had any thoughts on that? So I have a hard time already allocating. I mean, I know we do that many times, right? We're doing that with TFA, we're doing it with Teach Plus, right? We're doing it with a few other programs to support us with recruitment for future years. But it's starting to feel like it's a lot of money, right? And it's starting to feel like dozens of positions. And that's just for general ed. We haven't even talked about SPED, right? So I was wondering if you all had any thoughts on that. Any of you and all of you, sorry for the public, I'm looking at Ms. Neely Johnson, Dr. Johnson, Ms. Moses, Dr. Hurst, and Mr. Fleischman. So we'll go Ms. Neely Johnson, and then maybe we'll go around. Go ahead, Ms. Neely Johnson, start.
So, yes, we're thinking about next year. I guess for me, I always think about when we end up in a place where we have to do things quickly. And so one of the things that I heard at our last board meeting was that, can we at least have Edgenuity while we're trying to recruit teachers, right? So we do have Edgenuity, and so that is something that, is being implemented. And so as soon as I heard that comment, and I knew what school they were from, I sent my director to find out why don't they know they have Edgenuity, right? And that's what we do. But if we're thinking about next year, what I will say right now, I don't know if the teacher shortage is gonna change, right? And if I'm weighing the credit recovery program to having an actual teacher that can teach that content and give children their A through G, and it's approved by UC, because that's a whole nother process. I would say we keep the virtual teacher part and possibly, you know, look at credit recovery, the credit recovery part, either reducing it or waiting to see if, do we absolutely need it, or figuring something else out that we can do with our own staff to make up credit. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. This is where I'm sitting at right now in October.
Thank you. We'll go to Dr. Johnson, Ms. Moses, Mr. Fleshman, and then I saw Ms. Chamberlain and Mr. Savala after. Dr. Johnson.
I just didn't want a narrative to be out there that we're not recruiting, and that statement scares me only because people hear that and say, well, they've just given up, and that's not the case. We're daily recruiting and using our efforts to find people. Unfortunately, in some particular areas, it's a little bit more complicated because all districts surrounding us are also fighting for those same people. So I just didn't want that narrative to go out there because it sounded like we're not recruiting anymore, and that's not the case. We actually have a job fair coming up November 4th, plug out there. So I just wanted that narrative to go out, and I agree with Ms. Neely in the absence of, or while we are continuing to recruit, I think it's important that we do have a resource that we can use and students have access to as our last resort, but it is something that we would need.
Thank you. Ms. Moses?
Well, and I just wanted to add that we are paying for the resource. So as we know, every time we have students in a classroom, we must have a certificated supervisor in that classroom. So these classes have teachers in them because their kids are in. However, you might have an English teacher taking a 0.2 to cover this class that might be algebra. The way in which we're addressing that is by signing on with this service. The service actually costs us $8,000 per course. So when you look at it from that perspective, we have a staffing shortage. We have a teacher in the classroom but not qualified for that subject. So we use this resource and pay the upcharge of $8,000 so that our children can get their specialized instruction, even though we might be still recruiting that permanent teacher. Once the permanent teacher is hired, we pull the resource and it becomes a teacher's class. So this is a way that we can keep our high schools functioning. We can offer the correct number of sections of A through G that we need. But it's not a teacher savings. We still have to pay the teacher, but we need the credential and the expertise, and that's where the resource comes from.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
Mr. Fleshman?
Kim said the piece that I was gonna say.
And then it was, Ms. Chamberlain, go ahead.
So I just want to say that yes, the resource is very helpful for students in recovery, but putting on my other hat, we have been able to, by utilizing this program, and resource for students, have them recover ADA, which is probably helping us recoup some of the cost at that point too, and through the programs through the day, and having the students attend our school and know which ADA programs, A to G, programs that they are attending, and then we are able to get the ADA for those students.
Mr. Savala?
We have, I want to talk about structural thing, and I want to talk about this thing. So like I said, I think it would be important to know how successful are we in getting that credit recovery? Like, I think we talked about this in the spring. It's a very expensive program, 2 teachers, right? But we do what we need to do under the circumstances that we have. Structural question I want to just pose it to the group. I don't know if you're aware, the collective bargaining agreement of the United Teachers of Richmond specifies, I believe it's a 6-period day for high schools. How many high schools have a 6-period day? I believe it's 0. Most high schools have their own MOU that extends more periods in the day, 7 periods, 8 periods, etc. And this is causing partially this issue of we don't have enough teachers with the right credentials in the right places, right? We are expanding the number of courses that we have to offer. Now, the argument I've heard in particular from our executive directors is that we have seen data suggesting that graduation rates improve once we implemented this system, right? But that may be true. I'm not arguing its veracity or not, but I just want to pose that frame because these are the kinds of questions we have to decide and the priorities we're saying. If we're saying this is a priority for us, then we're gonna have to cut priorities elsewhere. And so I've struggled with equity from, high school and secondary, or secondary and elementary. I come from the elementary world, so I don't pretend to know high school that well, but in my experience as a labor leader in this district, this is one of our biggest issues is this MOU situation where things like every high school has a sort of different period structure. And so it is true that we would reduce the need for ingenuity if we stuck to what was actually in the contract. I'm not suggesting that we do that. That comes with a host of issues as well. But I think those are things that as groups we need to be thinking and talking about openly, and we're not loud enough.
So my question was, these classes, these high school classes where we have virtual teachers, they're full classes, right? They're not a little bit of kids in it, they're full classes. So that's the first, thank you for answering that question. They are full classes. The second question is about Ingenuity. So we use Ingenuity throughout the year for credit recovery. Before we had Ingenuity, we used summer school for credit recovery. Like they would have to go to summer school. If they were behind ninth grade, they would go to summer school ninth grade. If they couldn't catch up, they would go to 10th grade. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so you,
No, I'm gonna say we've always used some type of program, the program names change, so.
throughout the year,
Years,
we've
I've been here
always,
20 years, so Cyber Hive, I'm thinking going on.
throughout the year,
Edmentum,
and
And now
summer.
Ingenuity. So the company's changed, but we've always had a contract of sorts for credit recovery.
Edmonton is the one, Ms. Chamberlain.
So, okay. I would like to know if the use of credit recovery or Ingenuity or any of the names has exponentially gone up throughout the year, the number of kids using it throughout the year. If that number has gone up, because that is a data point to me. If kids are constantly having to take Algebra 1 because they're not passing the class, then what does that mean? Does that mean that we need to have pre-algebra? Does that mean that we need to have some other thing in between algebra and geometry or algebra 2? With that information, it can help us, I think, have these deeper conversations about what's the need for recovery throughout the year. Do we go back to the old model where they offered higher math in middle school, right? Or do we not and say, okay, well, now let's offer that middle math to make sure that they have that pre-algebra before they get to Algebra 1? Do we look at our pacing of Algebra 1? Because Algebra 1 is what I see most kids taking in summer school, because it's just it's that subject. It's just that kind of creak in the wheel. But for me, CBO Moses, I would like to have a little bit more information about how many kids are using this program and how often. Do they just need it one time? Or are they in Ingenuity 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade? Then they gotta go to summer school.
I will.
Yeah, sorry.
Neely Johnson.
CAO Johnson, if I could have
Right.
that, some of that
Well, I
information,
can
it would help.
I can share a little bit because that's gonna be tricky data to pull.
Okay.
I think we can pull a number of students using Ingenuity, but Ingenuity is a self-paced online course. One student could go in and complete their Ingenuity credits in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Another kid might go in and complete their Ingenuity credits in 2 months. It's literally self-paced. So when we assign additional point Qs, for Ingenuity use, we never know if that's 1 kid, 10 kids, 20 kids, or even how long we need that for. So that would also be some data we would need to bring back.
And I think there's also a point of discussion about if it's a self-paced, self-guided, self-taught project or program, then if they're able to get it by themselves through Ingenuity, because that's what we're saying. They can sit there and they can watch the video, they do the Khan Academy, they do whatever Ingenuity is bringing up to them, and they're able to get it by passing a quiz, passing a test, turning in the project or whatever. Then my question is, what's the hitch in the giddy up, right? So are we are they able to get it by themselves because that's the type of learner they are? I can slow down, I can speed up, I can take my time, I can type in the chat and ask questions. Or am I just sitting there and I'm keen and training? Got it on, I'm over here and I just push the button, or you understand what I'm saying? Am I actually focusing and getting it? Because then there's some data that goes to that too. If you pass Ingenuity through Algebra 1, show me how well you did in Algebra 2 because you got the foundation now. So I'm just trying to figure out, does that make sense? I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole and I don't mean to, but it's just, I'm trying to figure out what the impact is on the student. And then how can we make that impact widespread cost effectively? I'm complete.
I can add a little perspective from a parent having a child that is used, Edgenuity for, credit recovery. You do need to have, a teacher based on how it's set up because somebody has to facilitate, when students pass the test, when they move to the next level. Like there's, in COVID, we went through, I have a child that has had medical problems, so sometimes she's at school, sometimes she's at home. So we've run the gamut of every kind of online class to take. Some are, like you said, they give you they open up a course and you have full latitude. With Edgenuity, if you pass or fail, then the teacher has to regulate your next step. So if you are self-starting and you are not in need of any assistance, then you go right through without any assistance. If in fact or if you go straight through, you need to go to the next level, somebody needs to be there to click a button or do whatever. So, and it is very much aligned with students who, it's not necessarily an intervention type of program. It's really set up for students who can navigate this, probably navigate well in school and can do the same thing outside of school.
So it's kind of like our summit program that we used to have.
Mhm.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like summit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is
It's like,
practically the
like
same.
summit. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
Hopefully that helps.
I don't know if this is a bird walk a little bit, but you mentioned the pre-algebra and like just our math pathway. And so it's maybe relevant to the conversation with the Common Core. What is in these courses changed significantly. And so what we now have is Math 7, Math 8, right? In the middle school level. I think it's Math 1, 2, 3 is how we call it. But essentially, we used to have Algebra 1 at the middle school, sometimes even geometry at the middle schools. With the new standards, all of the stuff that most of us took in Algebra 1 is now spread into the other courses. So the actual content that I learned in Algebra 1 is about somewhere between 40 and 60% of that content is actually in our 8th grade math course. And our 7th grade math course has a lot of the content that we used to call pre-algebra, right? And so Algebra 1 that we currently have under the new standards is brought in some of the old Algebra 2 standards that we learned, right? So when we put our 7th graders right now into Algebra 1, it's not the same Algebra 1 that 7th graders stepped into 10 years ago, right? And so that's a big driving factor into why we don't have the Algebra 1 and geometry classes anymore at the middle school levels, because frankly, it was not really benefiting students because they didn't have any of that foundational stuff that you just talked about.
So now they get it. So they get in 7th grade, like 6th, 7th, 8th grade,
Yes.
a typical middle school, right?
Mhm.
Or 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Now they're getting those pre-algebra concepts
Mhm.
in 6, 7, and 8 spread out. So,
And Algebra.
and
what we know
Algebra
about.
1 when they hit. So they get in pre-algebra and Algebra 1 in those middle school grades. So then when they hit 9th grade and they're supposed to take Algebra 1,
Right.
they have more of a foundation
Correct.
than when we got it, which was just like a straight pre-algebra course, 1 year pre-algebra 8th grade, and then you went to Algebra
Yeah.
1.
And there's a couple of folks, Lawrence Pang is one of our Algebra 2 trig and AP Calc teachers at El Cerrito High School who've done some really deep dive on the data with Mark Labaco. And they could be far more eloquent than I am right now in describing it, but the data that they saw at Oswego High School is that our students who were skipping to Algebra 1 in the middle school or geometry in the middle school were getting to senior year and getting 2s and 3s on their AP Calc tests, right? Whereas previously we had lots of kids getting 4s and 5s on AP Calc. So that's a little bit, I know that's not really what.
No, but it's a good conversation to have because we had it all night at the board meeting.
Yeah.
So it's a good conversation to have. So thank you for that.
But I just to add to that, I also think that a rigorous math program in the elementary school is vital. And so now we have CERN or Engage New York and Desmos. And so the 5th and 6th graders are actually doing some pre-algebra work in that vein. And we have failed our kids with my math. It's crap. And so
Please don't hold back.
But I think, leading into that, if you're going into 7th grade unprepared, you're gonna go into 9th grade unprepared.
Absolutely.
And that's where recovery needs to happen. It's gonna take some years for us to catch up to a better math program, but we tanked in math, the whole district last year. And so we need to do better with our kids in math.
Well, before we continue on this rabbit hole, which I think is a really great conversation, I think that what we have in front of us is these this one service, but these 2 contracts, right? Ingenuity, which is the credit recovery, and then the teachers that are filling the gap that we currently have in our system. So Ms. Neely Johnson, could you just answer one more question for me? And then I have a proposal. You mentioned that we have 3 assigned teachers right now in the lab program.
Those are the ones that I knew of as of last week.
Okay.
We may have more.
But then there's, this contract would allow us to have up to 10. Okay, what I'm gonna propose is that we cut this contract by $100,000. And I'm gonna say a little bit of why. I think that HR works 24/7. Dr. Johnson, I think your team has done a stellar job under the current circumstances in the state and the nation. I also think that we are too reliant on all these additional resources and contracts throughout our system. That's not just one department. And I'm getting worried as we have seen the increase of sped, right? And the reality is that there's no people, right? So we're having to respond to that need so that our kids have adults with them to support them, right? So I don't want to downplay them, but I think that with our budget deficit, we have to increase our expectation of finding people. So it increases the hard work that already HR is doing. I'm gonna be real, and I think that if the need is there at the beginning of next year, I think that this has to come back to us in August, right? Or maybe even July, right? If it looks like we're just not gonna find people. But I think that I want to set a higher expectation, and I'm not saying eliminate it. That's why I'm not saying let's delete 270,000. I'm just saying let's cut it by 100K. That's what I'm proposing today to all of you. If anyone feels really strongly against it though, I mean, like, please, this is the space to push back, right? So I'm looking at all of our administrators and really labor partners, although I don't know if anyone in labor will really push back on that. Yes,
So when I'm always gonna just kind of come from the lens of student centered.
please.
I don't, I mean, I'm not saying I disagree to that, because you're right. Okay, yes, we need to continue to recruit. But I also want to always open up that we keep our students centered, right? So if we get to a point where we have to add, I think that is really what we're saying. We would have to add because we've exhausted all other methods.
100%. And I think that's why I think the caveat is let's cut by 100,000. And if staff gets to a point, maybe at the end of July, I guess I'm looking at the 3 of you since all of you would be the ones. Then I would say come to the board at that point. And I think that our next president, if she commits, I think we'd bring it to the rest of the board.
Oh, I'll bring it to the board, but you know me, let's cut it off. And then on an
So-
as-needed basis,
Right.
but.
Yeah. So
I'm
yes,
okay with that.
I'm committing to that. I don't know if I really will, but yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So any comments from our labor partners on that proposal?
I do want to just reiterate that you said that the twig 245 is actually the initial outlay for the materials K6.
Oh, that's not on here. That's why we're having this conversation. That's in lottery fund, so that's
Okay,
not on
so
here.
then this is another $245 for consulting on this new twin
No,
program.
This is the
No,
teachers.
this is for Edgenuity
No,
courses.
but I'm talking about the one above.
One is for virtual teachers,
Okay.
that when we don't have a teacher for that single subject that can teach A through
Okay,
G.
got it,
The other one is for the actual credit recovery course.
got it, okay,
And Ms. Teen, what I'm proposing is to cut the one of the teachers.
okay, got it.
By 100,000.
Okay, well, let's vote then. Okay, Ms. Chamberlain, I see your thumbs down. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's like, I'm asking everyone to vote on a proposal. So were you voting down, yes, let's cut it, or I disagree with the proposal?
I disagree with the proposal.
Okay, would you like to talk a little bit more? Would you like to share your perspective?
I don't see the sense in cutting something that we already know is a difficult process to fill. And you're taking away issues at, you're making it more and more difficult by doing this. And I mean, as a district, and the we, as it for the you, as a district to place. If we're going to look towards this, we need to look towards demanding a different type of scheduling at school sites. As Mr. Savala said, we have school sites that are continuously putting in extra MOUs that we are having to make these challenges to fulfill these areas. But not being able to fill the students and make sure that the students have every opportunity is a mistake for our district to do. I get the fee and the funding for the teachers. I totally get that. But that's like putting in a home ec program at a school site and not having a teacher graduate with a credential to teach home ec. You're doing the same thing. We don't have a Spanish teacher out there that has a credential to teach these kids that's coming into the programs. We have to look beyond, and these kids need the requirements met. And we're not looking at the fact that we don't have these teachers by cutting this. I just have a huge issue in the fact that we're constraining our school sites and our students by cutting $100,000 towards teachers. So my opinion. And if it goes forward, that's fine. I will understand that. And making sure that that next piece of going in July, when you've already set a master schedule and you have to tell them now that they cannot offer that class for the next year because we don't have a teacher by February, March to fulfill that class for the next year. At least we have an option with this. You're constraining the HR department, you're constraining the student's ability to take a course. And that's when we get students to leave our district and we lose ADA.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Ms. Sanders, I see your hand.
Thank you. I just want to jump in and make sure that as we're talking about secondary systems, we're thinking about kind of dependencies here. When we have students taking Edgenuity for credit recovery, their need for credit recovery would be defined by the credits that they need. And if we were to adjust or reduce the number of courses offered per student, that could actually increase the need for credit recovery, not decrease it. It's a much larger conversation. I agree that we need to review the MOUs that exist across our high schools and have a sense of how we really reckon with that system-wide. I think that's a long delayed conversation, but specific to this contract, I want to make sure that we're thinking about the right dependencies here.
I think for me, I agree with what you're saying. I also hear Ms. Chamberlain and Ms. Sanders, and I also hear Mr. John. there's conversations that we have to have with labor and with districts to come up with the plan, but at the center of it, it's still an equity issue, right? Because there are some of our high schools that have 7 periods, and they get to have Spanish 5 or Spanish 4 or whatever, because they have it set up in the system. There's other high schools that just have 6 periods, and these are your science, math, history, English, 1 elective that you get for your 4 years. So it's a conversation that we need to have. I don't think that we need to hinder, but I think we need to have open, transparent conversations in due time. And it needs to be a 2-way flowing information channel. So it's October and we have 10, but we're using 3. That's good. We don't know what's gonna happen after that, but what we know is what we're using now. And what we're using now is all of our kids are covered with these 3 extra teachers that we're doing through virtual teaching. But to hold a space for 10, and we're in such a financial crisis, is something that we can do when we're not in a financial crisis. Right now, every dime needs to be used for what we're actually using it for. So if we know today we're using 3, and we think we may end up at 5, then we hold space for that, but we release the rest of those funds so we don't have to, again, it's the long journey to March. We have to do what's in the right now and the reality. And I think the hard thing about this group is we're doing what's right now, our current reality, but we're also trying to plan for the future and trying to make sure that we have safety nets for the future and trying to make sure that we're making decisions for the future. And that's difficult to do in the right now, because we don't want to lose students, but we don't want to have money just sitting when it can literally lower the deficit and literally save a position in March. So it's about really doing that balancing act. And I think that that's where it comes into, let's propose this. What can we do now? What's the proposal for now? So I agree with the proposal, keeping in mind everything that Ms. Sanders said, everything that Mr. John said, everything Ms. Chamberlain said, and having those clear conversations with HR that are back and forth communication with the board, so the board to know. I'm complete.
Thank you. And I do see Dr. Hurst in a minute, if you don't mind. I definitely hear what everybody's saying. I think that even just for this conversation, some of you have changed a little bit of my mind. And I will just remind us, we have 4.6 million to cut, right? So if you're all telling me, no, let's just keep the 100K, that's 100K less that we have for the 4.6, right? So labor, I'm looking at Ms. Chamberlain, Mr. Sabala, and Ms. Steen, that's a position, right? So I want to be clear. I can't be more clear, right? I can't be the one pushing and pushing and pushing, right? It's like a push for labor to push us, right? So I totally agree. And every decision has to be student-centered. But ultimately, $20 million of cuts coming to the board in March, whether we all like it or not, right? So I keep centering every decision I'm making in this committee to that, right? Now, what I'm hearing some of you say is like, no, we really need it. So I'm not gonna go against what you're all saying, because ultimately you all are the experts. So I wanna take back my proposal and keep it. But as we continue, we're running out of sheets, y'all, right? We're running out of sheets.
Oh,
So-
you're okay cutting it?
Okay.
I think what we said, and I guess, and I do hear everyone's passion, because we do want to make sure that our students, that's why I said
Yeah.
student-centered decisions, right? But I would say that right now in October, if we're saying, our hope is that with some of the other programs that we are gonna start staffing early, and a lot of the things that we probably didn't do as well at the beginning of this year, so that we have a real good understanding of what our needs are, and continuing. And can I also add, and this is just me adding, I even have been someone recruiting a lot of people for our district. So I want to say that we all are HR,
Yes.
right? We should all be recruiting people to come to our system. And I try to do that to fill in places that we need. So I think if we all have that attitude that we don't have to rely on things like this, then yes, this is always a plan B. This should not be plan A.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for saying that, Ms. Mary Johnson. Dr. Hurst, and then
Actually,
we can move forward.
I'm gonna yield to what Sonia just said.
It was well said.
I
Go
think
ahead,
that
Coach.
I propose that we cut $100,000 and virtual teachers. And we take a new vote and we make sure we're working with CCC and our other partners. And we're making sure that we're working with labor to say, let's have these conversations about MOUs. And we're working with teachers to say, what are we doing to recognize these students early? Looking at those progress reports, look at the ones that are at a D or an F that first semester and saying, yo, you about to have to need some credit recovery. I need you to really step in and let's see, look at our on-site tutorial programs, look at our CBOs, our community-based organizations, and really lower our ingenuity costs because we're lowering the number of need of ingenuity and lower our virtual teacher costs. So I would like to call for another vote on my proposal of cutting $100,000 in virtual teachers.
Okay, sorry, my computer died,
That's
so
okay.
if you wouldn't mind looking at the screen.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, everyone. Again, all these decisions are so difficult. And we do need to have deeper conversations on the roots of some issues like the MOUs. I did want to just explicitly say that Mr. Svala has like a really key point about the allocation that we do for secondaries. I say that like that those MOUs though have supported our schools, right? The ends up being a good example for that of increasing graduation rates and A3G requirements, right? So, but I think that's a priority, right? That we have said. So I think that we should have the conversation, and if we say like, you know what, that's reducing class sizes, it's adding prep for teachers, right? It's doing all these things that we value, then we can say like we keep it, right? But otherwise, I think we should just engage in it, right? Because yeah, and maybe I think that like a conversation between district and labor should also be like, if no one's using a sixth period, why is it still in the contract, right? Now I'm like heading into another space, but why don't we move to our vote if it's okay? So everybody, please show your vote, and we'll just go with majority at this point. Ms. Steen? It's signed, Ms. Chamberlain. Okay, second. Okay, awesome. Thank you. We can now move to the next one.
Okay, so, this one. Okay, we talked about, okay, I'm gonna skip, because we talked about STAR instruments, we already voted on that one, now we're at Desmo math licenses. And, this is a supplemental, and Dean already sort of spoke, to it, we use Zern for elementary and Desmos for 6-8. I know that, when I just reached out to Director Chilcott, he was saying that this was covered by a grant, but then I'm also hearing that we may have overspent that grant, which is probably why it is in here. So, and these are always things that we're learning, so.
Sure.
I think in terms of supplement, I've asked Ms. Moses, is this something we could look at for restricted if we've already paid for some out of the grant? And for some of our restricted, like our Title I schools to cover them. So that's what I'm going to research.
Okay. Thank you. Well, any questions?
Just comment, I think Zern is relatively popular, with the teachers I speak with. Again, it's an issue, but yeah, just wanted to share that perspective.
my kid uses Zern, the 5th grader. She uses Zern all the time. I've seen that they do have, to Director Fleischman's point, they do have pre-algebra in Zern because they're using X and Y's and all of that. And her sister's like, her older sister's like, well, I didn't see that until I was in 7th grade, 8th grade. So there is some benefit to Zern. Zern is a kind of self-paced thing too. Like my daughter uses it where she has to do, her teacher says she has to do 20 minutes a day. That she had to do 20 minutes a day in 4th grade. 5th grade, the teacher says you have to finish a lesson. So however long it takes you to finish a lesson, you have to finish a lesson that night. So I particularly like Zern. It comes with a book. I like anything that comes with a book. But it comes with a book and it's on the computer. So I do, as a parent, see a value in Zern.
Let me clarify, we're looking at Desmos though for 6-8. I was just sharing that we have one for, because she referenced Zern. It's
Zern is elementary.
Desmos, which is supplement, we're not using the core. We're doing a lot of supplement because. Well, I'm not gonna say it, but,
So this is in addition to
well,
the,
Desmos is for 6-8.
it's in addition to the math that they already get.
Yeah.
So in 6th through 8th in middle school, this is in addition to the math work that they already get through the math curriculum that we use. And it's in addition because they need additional help, or it's in addition because the curriculum we have is not full enough? Why do we need the addition? I guess would be the question.
Similar to why people are using Learn, so, teachers have felt like it hasn't, the core that we adopted really hasn't met our students' needs. We're also supposed to be up for math adoption, but with the addition of the new math framework, we're actually gonna wait. And so right now, this is kind of stepping in as that supplement.
So this is saving us money because we have not adopted a new math program
We
yet.
won't be
We won't
adopting.
be. Okay, so
But is it saving us money? Because are we still purchasing the books for our core curriculum for classrooms?
Well, once we purchase the books, we have the books,
Okay.
and we have to have the books for Williams,
Sure.
right?
Oh, right.
Okay, but Desmos is like a supplement.
Got it.
So we're using the same books, same curriculum, because we haven't adopted a new math curriculum because they're working on a new framework. So we have to have the books, already got the books. But what we're saying is teachers are saying, books are booty. We need to have this supplement.
And they may be doing both. I'm not gonna say they're not using the book.
But they
We
have to
curriculum
have
guides,
both
but
of
they're
them.
using this as a supplement.
Okay,
And so what I was asking, because we were paying for it out of a grant, but we've overspent the grant, is that can we look at this as going into our restricted to pay specifically for the supplement for the Title I school, for example?
Can we do that?
Yeah, and I just looked up, one of our categorical, grants, which is the Learning Recovery Grant that expires in 2028. The Learning Recovery Grant can actually pay for any supplemental services, including.
oh, so we can get that money back from Ingenuity.
But it's one time, right?
It
Until
expires in
2028?
2028,
Okay,
so they.
but we have enough to do at least 3 years of it?
If that's what you like budgeted for.
How much is that? How much is the Ingenuity thing again? How much is, I can't see this number, it's too small.
265.
Oh, for Ingenuity for the courses, we're talking about the courses, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's 250.
250 over three, oh, it's behind me.
Hmm.
250 over 3 years or however long, 250
No,
over
that'd be that'd be
7 years?
750.
750,000? Wait, what?
Because it's 250 per
Oh.
year.
750,000?
Yes,
And you have that in your budget?
yes, so
Great.
there's a, 30, so we have to include that in our, let me just elaborate a little bit about all these categorical funding sources.
Thank you.
Um,
Others, we're gonna start using
Yes,
it.
yes, yes, but we are trying to find solutions.
Okay,
So, we have to have a plan for how we're using
How?
these extra dollars to support learning recovery.
right.
Ms. Neely Johnson would need to add Edgenuity as a part of the learning recovery plan.
Because it says recovery, because Ingenuity is
And
credit
then you set
recovery.
money aside for those years for that.
Great.
So anything that we propose here to move to categorical, it has to be a team effort to
Nice.
write it into that grant.
Nice.
Ensure that it's budgeted in the out years.
Nice.
So that we don't, overspend categorical.
So we don't get into the same situation where we overspent the grant and now we have to find another place for it. But you're saying that we have the ability for me to put on my little piece of paper right here, $250,000.
Well, it's 250 plus Desmos.
Oh, 250 plus Desmos?
Right.
How much is that, friend?
290, 94, 290, yeah, 290.
290? Great. You the math person, that's it?
Yeah. Because that's most of the for.
$290,000. Great.
Is everyone okay here? Ms. Teen, do you have a question?
I have a quick question about textbook, spending money on textbooks. Desmos is online, so we don't necessarily have to purchase those big idea workbooks. 6, 7, 8. So is there well, so we copy the Desmos workbook pages from our budget for the copy center. So it's costing my site a little bit of money, but I don't care about that because we're not spending the money on the big ideas workbook.
Sure.
So is that, how do we reconcile the, right, the textbooks is a different amount of money versus a supplement. So is there a cost savings that can be done if we're not ordering those workbooks?
So it looks like this line item is just for the software.
Yeah.
It's not for any books. So if there are books being purchased, that probably lives somewhere else in the budget. Probably
Yeah, that's
under
what I'm
the
saying.
4,000 instead of.
Yeah,
the
we're not buying the workbooks for big ideas if we're using Desmos.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Right, so we, even though Big Ideas is online, if they're doing Big Ideas, they're probably doing it online, not wasting the money on 1 or 2 pages from the workbook.
Oh, if it's adopted curriculum, it's required, so I don't
The
know. if
workbooks
you
are not
guys-
required, the books are required. Not the workbook.
Okay, so I think that's a conversation when we talk about the 4,000, so this is about 5,000.
Okay.
It'll come.
Okay.
Oh, I love it, Ms. Moses, Dr. Hurst, Ms. Millie Johnson. I appreciate you guys are all thinking in this direction. I mean, I think we should do it. I think we should put the 290 in categorical. So if everyone here agrees, let's do it. Ms. Chamberlain, I see a chair. Ms. Chamberlain, are you still there? It's okay. I think we're all in agreement. Thank you. Okay, that's 290 I'm putting in our sheet. Well, clerk is also keeping track. Okay, we can move to the next one.
May I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Would you be willing to tell us how much is in that fund or no, because we'll look at with like stars in our eyes and be like, "Here's all money." You don't have to tell us, I was just wondering.
What I'll say is it's a grant we'd like to last us for the next 4 school years.
So that's
So-
2028,
Yes.
okay,
Uh-huh.
so we have to be diligent with that money and with. And have a plan to how to spend that money that's going to last to 2028 and have an impact for kids into 2028, because our kids, that would be our current eighth graders to last, to see an impact of them, their 12th grade year, that we use this money to actually help their trajectory and their outcomes at the end of year 13, which is their 12th grade year.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if we spend too fast, then
it doesn't create that longevity and that impact.
yes.
And it would also be looking at current 8th graders to high school, but it's also looking at current, 3rd graders to middle school or whatever.
Also remember that we have to, when we approve our multi-year projections, anything that we move to one-time money, we have to have a multi-year
It
plan.
has to be
Yes.
allocated in those multi-year budgets.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I mean, our budget is public. I can share with you that the amount that we expect to get.
Don't tell me, because I know myself. Nope, don't tell me, because then I'll be like, cut everything, put it over there. So don't tell me. So
Okay.
I trust when you see when we can move it, you'll just tell us, hey, we can use it here. I'm
You
complete.
can tell the rest of us. and-
Just don't tell me.
Okay, well, thank you. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Well, we're moving to the next one.
Here, it says, associate two, and it says Lozano Smith again for 35,000.
Is this just legal services for your department?
I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I can explain.
Yeah, because I was gonna say I haven't.
She's like, oh, I'm gonna call my lawyer now.
So this is budgeted because it was in last year's budget. She didn't know it was there, so it sounds like it could be cut.
Absolutely,
But,
you good.
this was an allocation for our executive directors to be able to contact.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
In last year.
Absolutely not. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry,
So,
Dr. Hurst.
Yeah, we're not allowed.
Oh, okay,
It's only executive cabinet. That's called.
got it.
So,
Got it. And that can be controlled by you, right? Yeah,
They have, oh, that's the difference.
right,
That's,
right.
that's. the-
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
contact anyone.
Okay.
Okay, well, if everyone's okay with it, let's cut it.
Yep.
So that's 35,000.
clarifying.
Sorry.
Okay. So are we right now just talking about cuts for next year, or would you also like us to make shifts for this year in order to free up any fund balance? The services team is trying to find out if we want immediate savings and future savings.
I don't see, right now, I don't see a need for that contract for my
Okay.
department.
And for the
Yeah.
prior to, the Edgenuity, would you like us to next
I
year?
mean,
What do you think, Dr. Hurst?
What do you think for Edgenuity next year?
So like I said, we've always had credit recovery options, going back to what we've all said, that, you know, students need and.
Oh, yeah, I think that she's wondering if we wanna move it from
Oh,
this
yeah.
fund to categorical, to
I would say
credit
yes,
recovery
and
this starting
work
this
on a
year.
plan to make sure that,
Would you be okay with that?
yes.
And cut $100,000 from the amount.
Yeah, because that's separate, that's,
We're talking about the courses, the
Yeah.
Edgenuity, we're talking about the Edgenuity contract for
got it.
courses,
Got it.
not for
So
teachers.
the 240.
The way that I'm thinking about this budget committee is we're saving currently. What can we save currently? Because again, it's that long journey to March. So we want to save currently and we want to save next year and the next year and the next year, because if we can soften any cut, then I think we should soften it here, now, and plan to soften in the future. While we have our conversations with labor, while we right size staffing and class sizing and all of that, those things, while we talk about MOUs, while we talk about transportation, while we talk about SPED, all of those things are conversations that we have, but in the now, we act like the house is on fire because it is. I'm complete.
thank you. Okay, well, that's an additional 35 that we can add to the list. Is everyone okay with it? Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, I think that then, first, Ms. Neely Johnson, thank you. You gave us a lot of savings, so. Let's take a break. This seems like a good opportunity to do that. So we, Ms. Chamberlain, everyone watching, we will take a 10-minute and then we'll come back at 11:30.
Which one?
Thank you.
you.
Ms. Moses will let us know. Okay. Let me get this.
CBO We're ready.
Okay, everyone, we're coming back together. Thank you, everyone, for giving us a little more leeway on our break. We are now going to move to the next set of contracts. I think, are we moving to HR or? Communications, sorry. Everybody, if you could please pull up your communications, not very lengthy, it is 2 items, so we'll get through it. And then Ms. Sanders, I think that you might be online. Let me look. Yeah, Ms. Sanders. Oh, thank you. Are you leading us through this part?
So I may need to check in with CBO Moses before leading us through this part. Would it be possible to postpone mine until another day?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just preface that just for information, for the group. The majority of these costs are associated with our radio station.
Oh,
So
I see.
I think we need to check in about those
Oh,
costs.
yeah.
But that makes sense. So thank you, Ms. Sanders.
The radio station at El Cerrito High School?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
And just to clarify, it's a district radio station across 3 different locations. So El Cerrito High School is one of the locations.
What are the other 2, Ms. Sanders?
It's also at Dijon. So Dijon is fully networked as part of our radio station. And then we also have a radio station antenna in San Pablo. So what's at El Cerrito High School would be the control room where the class is taught.
Thank you. Okay, we're digging into it, but I just was curious.
Okay,
We can move to the next department then.
okay, so can we move to HR? It's very short too, yeah.
So Ms. Chamberlain, we're moving to HR. Do you have that?
Yes,
There it is. Okay, Dr. Johnson, are you helping us with this section?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Jump in if I leave something out. So just go line by line?
Yes, please. One at a time.
First one. It's our law firm that we use. It's a costly one. I've already been having conversations with our team on how we can lower those costs. We have some ideas. So the first one, there are 2 legal, but the first one really has to do with employment, labor concerns, grievances, investigation, ed code, all things legal regarding the running of our school district. With this also, within this, it's not just human resources department. If other departments may have questions regarding it, something we can answer, we may have to use the law firm for that as well.
Okay, sorry.
I knew it was, when we got to this one, I knew it was gonna be a big conversation.
Well, it
Got
was a big one when I saw that number when I first got
Yeah.
here. I said, is this real?
Yeah,
Are you making a
Wait.
proposal?
yeah.
Oh.
Could you talk about some of the strategies your department's implementing it to decrease it?
Yeah, you're right.
Apart from just not just calling them right away.
Oh, no, it requires the holding some kind of information.
Okay, you
So
don't have
let me
to.
give an example.
Sure.
Instead of just calling an attorney at the whim of every time something happens, we've established a weekly cadence of meeting with the attorney. So you save money when you're not calling them, but you're waiting for that day to, here are things that we're going over. We have a running record, just like ECR, where we go over current concerns, but then we can add additional. That saves time.
Doug, I'm sorry, seems like it's just one of those days. I have a family emergency, so I have to step away. I'll let Clark speak this.
What I'm hearing you say is it's cheaper to have a standing meeting with the lawyers than to kind of call them when something happens, because then you're taking 3 hours,
Yeah.
right? Instead of having a standing meeting to where you're just kind of talking about the issue at hand.
And you
How much-
argue for every interaction, so if we can lessen our interactions with them,
The better.
it's the best.
How much did this department use in previous years? Like,
I would probably need Ken's support with that,
okay,
because I know this isn't a cost based on previous year.
so let me ask you a question. If you had to go by your bare bones number, like I have to have this much because I know I'm gonna use them, I'm gonna use them weekly, right? Your weekly cadence.
So
What's that number?
I honestly could not answer that. I don't like to guess just for the sake of guessing. And I couldn't give an answer as to what that number would be.
But that's what you mainly, well, you don't mainly use them for that, but you're saying one of the key strategies that the office is using to cut down costs is having that weekly meeting
That is
with
one.
lawyers. Okay,
Another one also, a large amount of money goes to investigations. What I have noticed different from others is that a lot of those are done by attorneys where we have capable people who perhaps
to be able to do that.
just need some training and some
Okay.
support
Okay,
in order to conduct their own investigations and in a much more timely manner than when we outsource to an attorney who takes a while. It's not necessarily their top priority.
so I've been told, and I can't confirm this, but I've been told that HR used to do the investigations. Like HR used to do a lot of the investigations in-house. And then if it was something like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, they would send it out, but it wasn't always going out. It was a lot of the internal work was done at HR.
And not just HR, I mean, departments can do their own
And
investigations.
sites can do their own investigations, and so, yeah, EDs can do their own investigation. Okay,
Yeah,
because that's
it's not
part of
really
kind of other.
occurring as much
Okay.
in this district.
Yes,
I just wanted to share, I appreciate the comments that, Dr. Johnson just said, because that is one of the things I was gonna bring up during this section already was one of the concerns UTR has had, in their interactions. And just to be clear, right, I've been president a year and some change, and our executive director has been here a year and some change, so our historical record is super great, but, one of our questions has been, can we do more investigations in-house? Do they always go to legal? I don't wanna say average, but they do take, in our estimation, quite a bit of time
Yeah.
that teachers are, and let's be clear, we have to investigate sometimes for student safety, for
Right.
educator safety as well.
Right.
So it's not always not warranted, but we have had questions about the frequency of them being referred to legal
Okay.
services. So I really appreciate you acknowledging that.
okay.
And I just wanted to echo that is something we were wondering about, so without getting into the numbers, without having more specific information, I'm glad to hear you guys are thinking of it that way.
Yeah, it's also internal classified staff, so if we can start to, take responsibility for those and do them ourselves, it will cut down on legal costs, but also time that we have people out on admin leave, which is quite lengthy. From what I've seen.
When you were in your previous districts and areas, what was and I know our district is large, I know that we're a different district, but what have you seen to be the norm in this area?
As far as investigation?
No, as far as the cost.
Again, that's a hard question to answer because there are so many different circumstances that play into as to why the numbers are the way they are. And we do have 5 unions. I mean, we have a lot of employees. But this is not just about labor issues. Sometimes we have investigations of employee against employees.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have a record of previous years. Do we know?
Do we know how much we used in this before? Like, what's the average cost that we use? And lawyers for HR?
We'll have it for you.
Okay.
Last year was 1.9
million?
Can I also make a clarification?
Uh-huh.
I think that we also had the luxury at one point that in HR, we had a director who was a lawyer, right? So I think that the HR also went to that individual for a lot of questions because we had that individual in hand, right? So they didn't have to call a law firm every time because they had Miss Williams. Maybe I shouldn't have said her name, but you had Miss Williams who could answer any of those questions, right? Who now works actually for one of these law firms, right? So, so I think that also helped, right? Because now you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably don't have a lawyer and staff, right? So that probably doesn't help. I see a lot of eyes. I don't know if there is or not, but maybe the idea would be, another idea would be to hire a lawyer, but I don't.
Isn't that what Conrad is?
Please excuse me, there is a lawyer. Actually.
Yes, he is.
So,
I'm trying to answer questions.
You're right, I'm sorry, you're right.
so
there
we
is a
have a
lawyer.
lawyer.
Yes.
Great, cut it. I mean, you know.
Yes,
I do believe that we can lower these costs though.
Great.
And that is what I'm committed to doing.
Great.
And so this is 2 million, right? Am I looking at the zeros?
could we ask a follow-up question? Last year we spent 1.9. Could you talk about what we used to spend in previous years before that?
I can't do that directly because the only data I have right now is the data from last year. I did, however, inquire with our team, Javetta, Michael Bishop, and Vince, and for a district our size, the legal fees are just expensive. I thought the number was high as well, but according to the former CBOs, for a district with our number of students and staff and urgent issues, it is a little bit on the high side, but not extravagantly high. So it's a better way to approach it might be to do a comparison of like district and what they're spending. I do think this is a space in which we can find the savings, especially across departments, but what the experienced CEOs are telling me is legal costs are high across all districts.
I was just gonna say, for me, in Oceanside, which is about the same size, is a third of this. I look at this cost, you know, I'm looking at the same document that Ms. Moses and Veronica's looking at, $3.7 million overall. In legal costs, that's, you know, more than 6 attorneys that you can purchase when you work for the district.
That's right.
So it's incredibly high.
Yeah.
We have to do something about it.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe some of the strategies could be, we rebid how much it costs us to use these firms, right? To, maybe we hire our own legal counsel. I mean, like, I know it's been offered before and I personally wasn't for it for various reasons, but if we're spending this much, I mean, you're right, we could have a legal department of our own, like Oakland does, right? They have like I think they have 2 district lawyers in Oakland. The problem is that I just want to be transparent. The reason why I've been against that is because I think the challenge with districts is that we have to use 6 law firms because there's specific, like there's sped questions, right? You need a specific lawyer for that. There's labor questions, you need specific, there's facilities questions, right? So that's why in the past I've been like, it doesn't make sense because we're still gonna have to contract out the service, right? But here we could have 3 lawyers in HR alone and save money, right? For labor questions. So I agree. Clerk Smith, let's keep this figuring, let's cut it.
Absolutely.
I think that we should reduce it.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I don't want to just put like a blank number out there. But I wonder if maybe Dr. Johnson, Dr. Hurst, if you both have a suggestion to us today on how much we could potentially cut here for next year, not for this year. I understand this year needs to be like a transition year, but for next year, would you have like a suggestion for us, kind of like what we just did for the other contracts?
So initially, I'll let you say first.
Again, it's hard for me to give a specific number.
Sure.
So
Context of-
I've been saying 10%, starting off with, that's
200,000.
200,000. That's the start. I think there's.
For the whole 3.7 million or just
No,
for
for
the,
the 2 million.
2 million.
just for the 2 million?
So we've been cutting, as we go by department, we've been cutting legal services for each really. So this one's just specifically for the $2 million.
That was your suggestion,
That was
$200,000.
my suggestion.
Can I put another offer on the table? My other offer on the table is you have a brand new team.
Yeah.
That brand new team has the idea of unreasonable hospitality that's being filtered all the way down to our sites. I think that if we take more time building relationships, so it doesn't get to the point to where now I'm gonna sue you and now I have to ask a lawyer, now I'm gonna file a complaint and now I'm gonna do that. We end up saving a whole lot. I think a lot of what comes across us is because it's a buildup. It's a buildup and a buildup and a buildup. I'm not talking about special ed, that is different. I'm talking about the way we get the complaints, the Title IX complaints, the uniform complaints, all of these things, but that may be different too. But the idea is the same. How do we reduce the need for us being sued? Or how do we reduce the need of us having to call a lawyer? What resources are we actually needing? So to the point, I would like to put on the table, hold your pearls, that we cut this by $1 million. I think we can do it. I think that you can cut this by $1 million. $1 million, Dr. Hurst. We can cut it by $1 million and still be okay. I think it's radical, but we're a radical group of people. And we are all about the change. I think you can, I believe in you, Dr. Johnson. I think that we could absolutely do it. That's my proposal on the table.
Well, before we go to everybody's thoughts, what I will propose is a compromise.
All right.
Because I do think that jumping from in 1 year to half is a lot. We're setting staff to fail, if I'm being honest, in my opinion. I'd propose 500,000, which is a lot. It's still a fourth of the budget.
I'm not mad at 5.
And then, would you be okay with that?
I'll raise you 550, but no, I'll stay at 5. I'll stay at 5. $500,000, I'm okay with, because it gives you room. It gives you room to move, and it also gives you a tracker. It's October. How much have you used in October? Let's kind of track it. Does it come up in the spring? Because now people they back up and they like, I don't know, but like track it. I would go with $500,000.
But I think that it's also a challenge to everybody here, right? Including our labor partners, right? To keep in mind that we have to work together. That includes us, right? To solve the problems. We have had an increase in arbitrations. We have had an increase in grievances, right? For a good reason. I'm not saying don't file grievances, labor, please don't think that's what I'm saying. I think that we have to work through our processes because we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars through those processes. And I think that's part of the challenge, right? So that's an invitation to push us to be collaborative. Everybody present, right? So Dr. Hurst, and then I think I said Dr. Hurst, Ms. Steen, Mr. Zavala, Was there any other hands?
Yeah,
Oh, oh,
I'll just say, I think it's steep. That's a quarter, so 500,000. I would like to, I mean, we could put that there. But I would love to see the plan from HR and how they're gonna proceed. And then come back to maybe this body, just to kind of share with you where we are. And if we actually need, because we don't want to put them in a situation where they have a situation and because we are,
Out of funds, they can't. call.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's see the plan, but I say we can go for that.
I like it.
yeah. Plus, I mean, I think that like staff can always go to the board and ask for extensions on legal contracts, right? So I think it's setting us low, and then it needs to be, I mean, we do it every year. We've done it every year since I've been on the board, even before you were here, Dr. Hurst, right? Like, there would be like, hey, like, we need another increase of legal fees of 50,000 because we had this arbitration coming or whatever, and we've never said no, right? Because we have to do it, so.
And
I
there's
would
other
just-
lawyers in other pockets, right? This is just HR lawyers, but there's other lawyers. You got one, you got one, you got a lawyer, you got a lawyer, so there's other people that you can call that hopefully can pick up whatever law book and answer this question. But I think it's a good idea to shorten it.
It's HR, but, oh.
Sorry.
You all speaking it up and it's all there.
So I think, speaking from the admin perspective, I feel like one thing, Jamila, what are you calling this? Extraordinary, what?
Unreasonable hospitality.
Unreasonable hospitality. I think there should be some restorative practices training for our admin. Because a lot of that is on our sites and it starts with the conflict.
Yeah.
And because we are unable to be psychologists in our classrooms, I mean, in our offices, we don't know how to handle that. And so if we were able to be trained more in that conflict resolution, then it might be able to stop that or work that out. And working with HR, you know, I think then we can tell them, hey, you know, I've done all of this, or come and help me, be that partner for me. You know, we're doing a lot more than we've ever done before, social emotional work for kids. You know, I wear so many hats, and I think that is the next step for us to be like open arms and let's work this out. So that would be a training I would suggest
I would agree with that. Like,
Dr. Hurst.
that's,
immensely.
yeah.
I don't think they would and know how this goes naturally on. School, campus, and school is like a microcosm of all the stuff that we see outside, but we don't usually report out on how there's entrepreneurship is on campus.
Absolutely.
And we just put people in places, and it's not in our credentialing program. When you don't get it, when we're getting our admin, like those binders that I had, did not tell me what to do with, you know, parents who have fentanyl tendencies
Right.
here on my campus,
Right.
with their whole entourage, or an incident happens and you have folks from church and parents and people with multiple weapons and various and the other things, and it's just the administrator.
Yeah.
So I do feel like we need that. I feel like there's a covering that we need because people are super litigious now.
Yeah.
And I feel like the school district is like the final frontier, like you can actually walk in. Everything else is ambiguous. Where your child is, we have agency and you can walk in and make a decision. And as an administrator, you're like, okay, you're like, I don't, what can I do? So, I just think that's a very necessary perspective.
And I think we all need some training in that. I think the board needs training in that concept. I think the sites need training in that concept. I think that there needs to be a level of parent education. You can't come up here wilding out. Like there's, you know what I mean? Like there's some board.
Please come to the front office. Gabriel Day, please come to the front office. Thank you.
There's some board protection when you come in here wilding out. Like there are ways that we are gonna protect our principals, protect our sites, stay away orders, whatever it is, that you can't just come up here like it's the wild, wild west. But all of that training and all of that unreasonable hospitality and all of that actual conversation with our community, because we're building community schools and we're building community safety nets.
Yeah.
All of that needs to happen. And I think that can be done when we lower this option. because it's not an option anymore, right? We have to make sure that we're building in those connections. We have to make sure we're building in those conversations. We have to make sure we're building in those trainings. And again, I think that's a board conversation too. How are we making sure we're protecting HR? How are we making sure we're protecting our people? How are we making sure we're protecting labor? How are we making sure we're protecting kids? What policies are we putting in place? And then what are we actually gonna stand up and fight for? What are we not just gonna say, all right, we're gonna settle, all right, because you reward bad behavior too. If we're hiring these lawyers, this has always been my pet peeve. We're hiring them and they're not doing nothing. Are we gonna fight? Like, are we gonna fight, or is this something that we can't fight? And if we can't fight it, then what precedent are we setting? Like, how are we having these conversations? Because the word on the street is, you sue WCC USD, you're gonna win. That's the word on the street. I'm just telling you. So it's one of those things, and see, I'm an HR nightmare. I guess I stop talking.
Let's
Never
raise
mind,
this
I'm
back to 2
complete.
million, please. I'm just kidding.
I'm complete.
Okay, sorry, let's just, also,
Oh,
let's,
John had
if
something.
someone's speaking, make sure that you are called on, or if you're not, say your name, just because of the people on Zoom.
Yeah.
Every time I've gotten like a text, so make sure you're
Yeah.
saying your name, including us.
Yep.
And don't worry about it, Mr. Sabella, and then I lost my, Dr. Johnson after that.
I wanted to support your, recommendation of the cut of 500,000, which would represent 25%. It is an ambitious goal. Think about cutting 25% off of your body, and that's a little, you will function differently, right?
Sorry about that.
No problem. But, so yes, 500,000. I also would like to suggest, Dr. Hirsch was mentioning that it would be good for the HR department to bring some sort of plan or process of their approach. And I think Dr. Johnson already spoke to some of that in how they're doing some changes they're instituting. I believe that, some of those changes will result in significant legal fees. I also do want to speak to the fact that, at least on UTR's end, we meet every Friday with HR to prevent grievances. We go over issues that are grievances, usually, not always, but many of them are, and we try to handle them so that they're not going through a legal process, so that we can support members and students. So we do that on a routine basis. And one of our concerns through that process has been the length of investigations, the fact that investigations are conducted often by lawyers. So though ambitious, I do think the 500,000 is a good goal. And I also wonder if part of the plan that Dr. Hurst suggested is we do look into possibly staff legal support on a permanent, ongoing basis versus referrals out. Because you're right, with 500,000, you could hire, possibly 2, maybe 3 lawyers, right? So Dr. Hurst's initial proposal was 10%. We're going more ambitious with 25%. So maybe included in that is the concept of a staff lawyer, which could then potentially yield to even reducing this number further. When we see like, maybe not, right? Maybe that's not a suggested option, but I wanted to support your 500,000.
Thank you. We'll go with Dr. Johnson, and then we'll go Ms. Neely Johnson, and then I'll go after that. Go ahead.
Not surprisingly, but John, I wanted to echo what President Sabala, inside joke, just said. And then just understanding that all of these costs, they are under HR, and of course, HR's responsibility. But a lot of these costs have to do with us not abiding by our contract, not considering the choices and decisions that we're making, and whether or not they're in alignment with just how you lead people well. So it's everyone's responsibility to help reduce these costs, because they're a result of something that didn't take place properly in the beginning. And now we're in this place. And one thing I appreciate from UTR is that when we meet, it's not just like, we're just bringing all our complaints to you, but we're literally talking about how we can come up with a solution. And so if we can do that across the board, I think that will also be very helpful. And just being more proactive instead of reactive, and then it's too late and an attorney has to be involved.
I love that.
So, and that's a lot of work on our part,
Yes.
training, and when we have the
Yes.
time. But the training and then board policies all of those things.
Mhm.
And just changing our overall paradigm and of being, more collaborative and relationship oriented
Mhm.
than, for lack of better terms, being like punishment driven and let's be more solution focused. So, yeah. I do think that we will, it is a steep cut, but up for the challenge.
Nice.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Ms. Neely Johnson?
I was gonna say, Tanya Neely Johnson speaking now. I was just gonna say that, you know, I've been in the district for a little minute now, year 20 for me, but, we did have a district lawyer, and I would say that the limit to that was that there's the gamma, right? And so you really, if you did hire a specific lawyer, they would have.
Laura Velasquez, or trying to get this, Laura Velasquez, please make your way to the office. Thank you.
They have to have this experience in the different needs that we have.
Mhm.
I advocate though more training, and we're doing a lot more collaborating
Mm.
in terms of our principal meeting where we are actually having HR and other departments have moments. So that is something that can be infused in that. And I did come from a different district 20 years ago. We did have things that we did at the site. And so that was gonna be one of the recommendations I was actually gonna talk to John about eventually. I was a rep, I was a teacher, so I was a rep. And I would meet with my principal every week. And we would just talk about what the concerns were, and we really tried to resolve a lot of things there. I was the thinking partner. I also knew the contract. And so I would also say, yeah, okay, well, yep, this is the contract, and, you know. And I really did, although I was advocating for, you know, teachers, at that time I was a teacher, but I was also advocating for our students, because this is my passion, this is the career I chose. And so I think that if we can do more of that, I think we then have less needs. And then the same with for our students, right? Really building those relationships, community schools, really having a place where she said we're the last frontier, but we're the safe place. This is where people come to get the information that they need.
Yes.
So becoming more of that, I think we can then see some of these costs.
Thank you, Ms. Neely Johnson. So I'll go ahead and then Mr. Flashman will go. So, I mean, sounds like we're putting forward this proposal for 500,000 for next year. I would like to propose something in addition, which is for this year, we cut it by 50,000, which is 2.5%. But Dr. Hurst, that would give you the ability to use 50,000 for training that we heard Ms. Dean needs. Maybe hourly pay for our administrators, volunteer training, their contract and mediation. Just because I heard a need that will actually really help us decrease this. And honestly, training always needs funding, right? And our administrators, as we're hearing and we're seeing, like, they're overwhelmed, and least we can do is at least pay them hourly, right? So I would like to offer that in addition. For this year specifically, which would be a one-time thing, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. Okay,
That's good.
So 500,000 next year.
and then 50 for this year, but it's not a
50.
saving, it's like,
This year's not a.
right, we're like
Not a saving.
taking 50 to put somewhere else.
But next year,
Yes,
500,000.
I can add
This is your goal, Mr. Milano.
yeah.
yes.
So if you're talking
Yes.
next year, let's do 1 million.
Ah! Mr. Flashman?
It's not appropriate for this.
Okay, well, thank you. Then let's move forward. Sorry, as soon as you're leaving, John. Everybody in agreement with the proposal?
John has a thumbs up.
Esteem, Dr. Hurst?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a actual almost a day for all 100 admin.
Oh,
So, you know, at our per diem. So I
Oh.
think we can talk about like when we would do that, how we would offer it. Whether it be, I don't know if we could mandate, but I think it'd be really important, and I love that idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. It was great,
Thanks,
yeah,
Denise.
thank you. Wonderful. Oh, I feel like we did good. Okay, that's an additional 500K we can put on the list at least temporarily. Dr. Johnson, sorry, you can move. I thought we were done for a second. We can go to the next one.
The next one is just specific, this is general counsel for immigration and visas for employees.
Would you like to talk a little bit more about like what that means? Like
We-
employees who are coming from another country
Yes,
and need
like
that
our-
service?
Yeah,
Got
like
it.
our teachers who come from other countries. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what we've used in the past for this particular one, if that's about what we're spending each year. And I don't know if that one can be,
We spent a little more last year.
so we cut it here.
We already cut it.
Yeah.
Last year we spent 443.
Or 43
443.
last year, so that's 300. I'm sorry, what?
No, I was
Oh.
telling you.
Oh, okay.
Thing. I
Oh.
think we had more, I'm not sure.
And do we have a similar number of teachers coming from other countries? Philippines and Spain?
This year is smaller than, last year we
It's
had
smaller.
27.
Okay.
This year, I think we've got about 15 coming.
Okay, so which makes sense why we reduced it already.
And product of, we had less vacancies instead this year than last
Do you see a place, this kind of goes to our previous conversation and services, do you see a place where we're gonna have to continue to recruit from other countries for SPED?
year. I mean, trends all say yes. I mean, last year we needed 27, this year we needed 15, so that's a good sign. We get our retirements in the springtime and folks leaving, so it's hard to say right now if it's gonna go up, down, or stay the same.
Yeah.
But I don't anticipate that we're gonna stop. In fact, I was getting ready to talk to you about the restart process now for next year.
Okay. Well, any questions on this one? Okay, well, let's just vote. I mean, it's one of those that, yeah. So let's move forward with the vote. This is for legal services for immigration, for all the teachers that we've hired for. Okay, so we're keeping this one. We can go to the next one. Don't let President Zavala distract you, please.
Sorry.
Just kidding.
True.
Okay, our next one is fingerprinting, and that's our DOJ cost. 33,600. I don't see it, everyone needs to be fingerprinted.
Right.
So,
Okay, any questions about fingerprinting?
This is for like volunteer badges and for employees, and this is all the fingerprinting that we use, every fingerprinting that we use is this cost, okay?
See, it's classified.
yeah, actually, that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, let's vote. Okay, see everyone thumbs up, let's keep it, we can move to the last one.
And our last one is related to recruitment. It says blanket PO for HR advertisements. But that also has to do with, job fairs, EdJoin, Indeed, not Instagram, LinkedIn, EdCal, and any other one that is rare that someone may ask of, we use those costs. And then I don't think people are also aware there's even costs when we use, which I was shocked by, when we use communications to help us with advertising. There are costs associated with that as well.
Okay, any questions on this one?
Oh, yes, Instagram too. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and vote. And we're keeping it. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the conversation, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're actually gonna go back to communications. Ms. Logan and Ms. Sanders wanted to actually revisit it. So Ms. Logan, we can pass it to you and Ms. Sanders.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to clarify, if we go to the communications tab, there are 2 items listed there, but actually under column A, it does say information technology. And these are 2 contracts that we looked at and talked about last week. So NWN is for phones and Conterra is wide area network for internet. Those are also listed on the technology tab. And last week we reviewed those and you all said we gotta have phones and we gotta have internet. So just to clarify.
Okay, made it easy. Thank you, Ms. Logan. Ms. Sanders, do you have anything to add?
Just thank you, Ms. Logan, for the clarification. And just want to clarify, we absolutely do need to have a conversation about the radio station fiscal impact. But the fiscal impact of those contracts is much, much larger than the fiscal impact of the radio station. So I just want to make sure that we've got that in context for the shared understanding of the room.
Thank you. And where would that be in the contracts, Ms. Sanders?
So some of those are still waiting to go through for this year. I do have a full rundown of all of those, so I'd be happy to provide a full report on all of those.
Got it, but because they have not been approved, Ms. Moses, that's why we haven't, they're not in front of us.
Got it. Okay, my apologies. I just assumed because I know that's her budget.
Oh,
The
gotcha,
radio.
gotcha.
And we're looking into why those are listed twice. So there's something.
Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering why they would be listed twice. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, hopefully they're not double billing us. Right. Oh, right. Even more important. Yeah. Okay.
I would like us to have a conversation at some point about the radio, the radio station, and you know, what was that? That TV killed the radio star or whatever. that
It's just
song is.
us,
Like,
every-
where, how relevant is it? How are we using it? What do we see it as? Because we have social media now, we have other forms, like I would like to know what our radio station is, how we use it, what's the impact, what are we getting from it? And do we need to stop doing that and concentrate on something else? Or is it a skill that we're teaching the kids? Is that a viable skill now to have radio instead of having social media technology in a pathway or something like that? So I don't know.
And we will do that. I want to ask Ms. Moses, but Ms. Moses, sorry, no, sorry. We will review,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, we will review like the radio station contracts and all that. In a future, in one of our future meetings, right? On the, I don't know what to call it, unassigned or soon pending contracts discussions.
Yeah, so where are we in the process with that? Have they been submitted and are they waiting in our workflow, or are we still negotiating? I'm not clear on where we are with the process, so I'm asking for clarity from the things.
There's a mix of both. I think we should probably sit down and just walk through that. And then in terms of the really important questions raised by Clerk Smith Folds, and let me name that I'm speaking. Hi, this is Liz. Let me take my own direction here. So hi, this is Liz from Communications. I do want to also address what was brought up by Clerk Smith Folds about ensuring the relevance of how we use the radio station, and also making sure that the radio station is fully serving all students in the district as a district resource. That will be included in our communications plan for this year, and I think those are things that are really important to discuss. And audio is actually a growth medium, both for jobs and for advertising dollars and consumers. So it's an interesting and important conversation.
Sorry. What the house we want?
It's like a tardy sleep, you gotta be in class or certain.
No one leave the room. Okay. I was like, oh, is that Joss?
Again.
Wow.
Hercules does it.
Yeah.
Hercules does it. If they're caught in the hallway, not in class, they have a 2-hour beautification that they have to do.
I love that. Look at them running. They're like, oh, let's get out of here. Okay, let's go back to, first of all, thank you. Ms. Sanders, was she done? I can't remember.
Yeah, it sounds like we're still waiting for those contracts to come through, so we'll bring them back to the committee. Our plan is after we go through these early sheets to see, because these were pulled a week and a half ago.
Yes.
To see what's come between then and now, and then bring you.
And what's pending. Okay,
Have our next meeting on the.
great, thank you. Okay, perfect. That
And I
sounds good.
have an explanation of how they ended up on the same two sheets.
Yes,
So the purchase order number is the same, which means these are the same contracts, so they're not duplicated.
got it.
However, they're listed as site under technology, but under objective as communication. So I think it was a sort of error, so we
Got it.
apologize for
Okay.
that and voting for that.
But it is not budgeted cost.
Not, but no.
Okay, great. Okay, well, process, it is now 12:20.
Nice.
We have done great work. We have left, business services, which is kind of lengthy, it's pretty lengthy. And then we have. Do we have facilities, Mr. Fraser? What do you
On
say?
the unrestricted side, we're gonna wrap in the business.
Oh, you're on in business service, okay. So my suggestion for us, and we did say we would stick to time, but, we have to do, we have to, calendar 2 dates that end up having too many conflicts. So my suggestion is that we do that now, and then. We do any public comment, and if we finish 15 minutes early today, gives us a little bit of grace. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
You okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then just a summary, do you want to talk about how much we've saved?
Ms. Veronica, will you check my numbers? But it was the 838, 620 plus 500, correct? 500 from the lawyers, HR lawyers.
Yes.
So the total, so we did 838,620 plus 500,000, which is a grand total of $1,338,620.
Wow.
So
Alright.
that's huge. So everybody clap it up. That's huge. Still far from our 4.6, but a lot closer than we were. So we need to party in our progress. Saving $1 million is saving $1 million. So that's huge. Now whatever 4.6 minus 1,338,620 is, that's our baseline. That is not that's not the ceiling, that's the floor. The floor is 4.6. We need to try to hit 20, but floor is 4.6.
Thank you for that. Okay, if everyone could please take out your calendar. We're just gonna do it now since we're all together. So I'm gonna repeat the dates that we have scheduled, and then, we're gonna find 2 additional meetings, so.
Today's the 17th.
Okay. Okay, our next scheduled meeting is supposed to be on Halloween. That's one of the ones we're changing, so ignore that. The one after that is supposed to be the 7th of November. Here at the ANSA. From 9 to 1. No,
4 to 7.
4 to 7, thank you.
Yeah.
4 to 7 that day. That's the one that I couldn't remember. Okay,
That is election day,
Yeah.
but
So
I'm
vote
okay
early.
with that. Yeah, go vote early.
actually, there's a voting booth here at the ANSA.
Oh, so you can vote here.
Vote, come to the meeting. It's my
And-
voting
Yeah, I
place.
think that's good.
4 to 7.
That's
4 to 7.
4 to 7 on November 7th.
Yep. Then the 21st of November, that's the second one that we gotta change. Because it did fall on Thanksgiving, and I got a few responses from people that were not gonna be here for good reason. Our last meeting is the 28th of November here at the ANSA. And correct me if I'm wrong, but 9 to 1 here that day,
But not the 20.
You have 2 to 7.
but not the 21st.
They said you had 2
We
to
had 2
7.
to 7.
2 to 7? Okay, let's just take the temperature of the room. Would you prefer 9 to 1 or 2 to 7 on the 28th?
I mean,
9 to 1.
Not to-
are you, intending to build 2 more meetings? Because the
Yes.
reason why we did that was because we thought we would need that time. But if you want to put 2 more meetings on the books, then perhaps we go 2 to 5 or 2 to 6. I'm sorry.
28th,
Uh-huh.
November 28th. Are you advocating for not 9 to 1?
No, it was already 2 to 7.
Which we're making.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Take the
seeing
temperature.
what, if the group prefers 9 to 1 that day or 2 to 7.
So the only conflict I have is I would be here around the same time, 9:45. I have a prior commitment to do fifth grade library volunteer, so I would be able to get here at 9:45. If y'all okay with President Gonzalez Hoy and Dr. Hurst starting that, and then I come in where I fit in, I'm fine with that. So I'm okay with 9 to 1 on the 28th.
Ms. Sanders?
I think the hand's still up from last time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But this would be, we're headed to crunch time, and this would be the last, so y'all would have to really have those real in-depth conversations before I got here.
Well, let's leave it now, 9 to 1. If in the next few meetings, including the 2 additional meetings we're gonna add, we actually get so much work done that day we might not even need, then great. And if we need to reduce it, we can reduce it.
Like 10 to 2.
28th is 9 to 1. Okay, so we need to find 2 additional dates instead of Halloween and instead of November 21st. So let's start with Halloween. Is there another date anyone would like to propose between today and November 7th? Maybe I'm looking for us over here.
We don't have one scheduled for next week.
26.
Yeah, the LCAP town hall meeting.
I'll look up town hall that afternoon.
Mhm.
And you have the mayor's meeting Thursday, the 26th.
We also have a meeting. Do we have a county meeting?
We have,
No, that's
I
this
don't
week.
have that, yeah.
on the 26th of October, there's the West County Mayor's meeting, there's board agenda setting, there's the anti-racism advisory group.
Yeah.
And then you said there's the town hall.
I don't have any of those. Okay, okay, it sounds like the 26th is awful. So let's do what about the 27th? It's a Friday?
4 meetings today for this. I canceled meetings. Let's have you guys cancel some of those meetings. Or
Well,
have
I mean,
the
I
mayors
don't mind
come up
canceling.
and figure out how to get us some more money, one of the two.
Well, we don't set those meetings. That's the problem.
know.
The mayors do. So we are invited guests that sit in the audience. So we don't even get to decide. That's the only challenge. Agenda setting, we can definitely move, like.
The 23rd,
We are all at UTR that
I can't do the
the
25th. Plus
25th
we have a
is
school board meeting.
board meeting. And
And I can't do the 24th. Okay, so it's the 27th
for the
or we
23rd.
look at the following week.
Oh, 23rd, because UTR is out, so you wouldn't be able to do the 23rd, right?
all of us would be out, yeah, we're at city council.
And no meetings on Friday, nobody wants the 27th?
Oh, we have meetings every day, but we'll make it work.
What about the 27th?
Works for you.
Mhm.
The 27th works for
Ms.
you?
Chamberlain, did you have a problem with the 27th?
No,
No.
you just. Nope.
Okay,
I think if we did the 27th in the morning, that would be beneficial, because that's trunk or treats in the evening. For a couple of cities are having their trunk or treats on the 27th in the evening, but if we did the morning, I think it could work.
okay, yeah. To Ms. Chamberlain, I have an all-day meeting. I am moving, Ms. Chamberlain, for this meeting. So yes, let's do that. Okay, let's do
So
the
the
27th, 9 to 1. We
Are we
will
gonna
do
keep it
it
here
at
or-
Pinole,
Okay.
because I think we're at the end. So
Okay.
High school.
Pinole Valley High School, yeah. Okay, now we need another meeting between November 7th meeting and November 28th. So it could be the week of the 13th or it could be the week of the 20th. Oh, not the week of the 20th. That's why we're moving it. It has to be the week of the 13th.
What about Monday, the 13th?
When?
Principal Steen, you said 16?
Thursday, 16th,
That works for me. Maybe an afternoon meeting that day?
Yeah, as long as finish by 7.
Yeah. Okay, 2 to 7? On the 16th?
Can we do one?
That one will be,
Can we do 1 to 6?
um,
Or can we not do 1 to 6?
yeah. we want to-
Just give me a buffer. So then I can.
That one would be Pinot as well.
No.
Pinot Valley High School, Clerk Smith was asked if we could do 1 to 6.
Would 1 to 6 work, or is that just an odd number? But 1 to 6 will work, so.
1 to 6 works for everyone? 1 to 6 works for
And where's that? Pinot Valley?
Pinot Valley.
November the 16th, 1 to 6 at Pinot.
One to six.
Yep. At Pinot Valley. Okay, thank you, everyone. Any issues?
Reiterate.
Sorry. Yes, so our next meeting will be. Okay, I didn't. Rosetta, you, thank you, 27.
Pinole Valley. So next one will be November 7th from 4 to 7 at Deanza. 11/16 at Pinole Valley from 1 to 6. And 11/28 from 9 to 1 at Deanza.
9 to 1 at the answer on the 28th.
9 to 1.
And then the very first one was,
9 to 1 at Pinole Valley on the 27th.
October 28th, 27th,
27,
October.
27.
Rosa, this might help you. Would you mind just sending calendar invites to everyone here?
16.
I put them on a calendar.
Oh, awesome. Okay, let's send it to you.
And then have we determined what we're gonna look at each of those meetings yet?
Just we're gonna continue.
Just what we're gonna continue with, okay, and then have the other attendance contracts come to us.
Okay, is there any public comment for today? Anyone in the audience?
No.
Yeah, it's not that to you, sorry. You were in this
No, that's good, class dismissed.
Okay, everybody, well, we actually did that pretty quickly, so, we will end our meeting today at 12:33.
Thank you,
I have
everyone.
a question, okay.
Oh, sorry, what's your
We
question?
don't have very many sheets left that I have. Is there additional beyond these that we will be given so we can review them prior to the meeting?
Yeah, we're gonna be given, pending contracts still,
Okay,
moving forward, yeah, we're gonna still review a few things.
okay, because it's helpful to start reviewing prior to make sure that where the budgeting has come from.
Ms. Moses, you wanna?
During the last board, meeting agenda, we had 4 attachments. They were the unrestricted 5,000 and 4,000, and the restricted 5,000 and 4,000. So I'm not sure if you'd like to, we will be adding more 5,000s based upon what we received in the last few weeks, but if you wanted to look at the 4,000s first here, you have, everybody already has those for it.
That's a good idea. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, unrestricted 4,000.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.